Three, two, one. Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another No Operator stream. Unfortunately, it is Jujutsu Kaisen break week today. If you guys didn't know, some of us on this call may or may not have known we were on break week and we're expecting a chapter this week. But yeah, no, guys, thank you all so much for being here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go into a deep discussion on literally every single Yuji fight that has happened, which is mostly just an excuse to talk about Yuji's entire character development as a whole. And I think by the end of this, my point that I really want to prove to everyone is that suffering can indeed create character. But let me go ahead and introduce my guests. You probably have already seen them on the screen, so it's a little bit of a, little bit of a spoiler. I might have already, blew it there. But first things first, I want to go ahead and introduce the man, the myth, the legend himself. I got Tiberius.
Yo.
You guys know him. You love him. Huge member of the community. Awesome creator himself. Makes awesome content. Go subscribe. Tiberius, tell the people a fun fact about you. Tell us something that we don't know.
A fun fact about me. My real name is not Tiberius.
That's actually insane. I did not know that.
I don't have any name, actually.
Can you reveal your real name, or is it secret? Is it your secret identity?
Maharaga.
Oh, shit. All right. That makes so much sense. You're so adaptable. That's why your memes always come out in 2 seconds. You're just easily able to you got a wheel above you. You got a cheat code. It's unfair.
If that's what we're calling it. Yeah.
And alongside Tiberius, I also have got the man, the myth, the legend himself. Everyone's a myth, a man, and a legend. I got Quirkless Shinobi.
What is up, man? Glad to be here.
Quirkless Shinobi, also another awesome JJK YouTuber, kind enough to come on with me, and he's been on a couple streams lately, kind enough to come on again. But yeah, like I said, I think this is going to be a great opportunity to discuss all things Yuji from the very beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen to the very end of Jujutsu Kaisen. We were kind of even just chatting before, and I made everyone be quiet until we started the stream, which is kind of mean, but I was like, no, we're discussing what's the point of the stream. But anyway, guys, yeah, so like we were kind of just talking about like how this is like going to be like a major big chapter for Yuji's development. We don't know what to expect. Quirkless was very excited for a chapter tonight and then was very upset when he found out there wasn't a chapter.
How could you out me like that?
Damn.
You didn't have to let him know.
I gotta just let everyone know the climate that we're in right now. I gotta let the Max Elephant out of the room. I'm gonna stop with the puns. I'm sorry.
My man said let the Max Elephant out the room.
But yeah, like Yuji is obviously going to have a really big moment. I didn't really, Tiberius, I kind of know how you felt about everything, but Quirkless, you and me haven't really discussed the previous chapter. So like, what were your thoughts on 265?
I loved it, and I think there was a bit of subtext there too with Sukuna that I really hope we see more of going forward. Like, I know I don't want to go too deep into it, but when they're talking about the flower and like the different types of flowers, and Sukuna and like Yuji points out, oh, you know what that is. And for a second, Sukuna, he pauses and says, oh, I read it from memories. But my interpretation of that was that Sukuna's lying and he already knew what it was. And I like these tiny little hints we get throughout the series that the man Sukuna became of like this murderer wasn't always who he was, even though he kind of denies everything from his past of being the Fallen.
I had a different interpretation originally about that Yuji actually knew what it was, and Yuji is basically seeing like what if like maybe he had a moment with Megami or something like that. But then basically he was checking Sukuna to see what memories he had, or if he actually looked through Megami's memories, and then comparing that to where if he actually went through Yuji's memories. Because now he knows he didn't go through Yuji's memories, but he went through Megami's memories. But I have a different opinion on it now.
I think I honestly think one of the coolest things about this chapter is there's so many different interpretations you can make of it, because it's not really vague in a sense, but there's so much symbolism and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of themes that Gege hits upon that if you're not keen to, will really easily very much go over your head. Like, and I honestly really enjoy both of your perspectives, because I think you both hit on something that I definitely interpreted from the chapter as well, which is Tiberius, you mentioned that Sukuna claims that he went through Megami's memories, but he didn't go through Yuji's memories. And I think the way that he talks about it is interesting, which makes me also think about what Quirklish said, where when he answers Yuji, when Yuji's like, wait a minute, you're a flower guy? Sukuna does kind of hesitate. He has like those 3 dots, before he answers. So it's to assume he's kind of quiet for a moment. He thinks about what he's about to say before he answers, that he looked at it through Megami's memories, which, again, sure, maybe he's just kind of getting accustomed to the more casual way that Yuji is kind of approaching him. But also you could look at it, on Quirklish's side, that he's kind of hiding something, because it's interesting how Sukuna was like, Yuji's like, oh, hey, Sukuna, you would know all about this place. You probably went through all my memories, right? And then Sukuna's like, I would never go through such useless memories. What's the point of that? And then I think either before or after that is when he says that he learned what the different flowers were for Megami. Like, I'm again, Kashimo went through his vessel's body to learn what electrolysis was. Electrolysis. I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing that. Electrolysis. And so, like, that's a very mundane, random shit, but I can see how that would... Kashimo would look towards science of the way that his ability was used in the more modern era. What has electricity become? Whereas, like, Sukuna, it's like, what did you look at Megami's flower knowledge for if you were completely excluding unimportant memories? It's like he's inconsistent. So I definitely like both of your interpretations. I think both of you guys hit interesting nails on the head. It would be interesting because we still have not gotten anything in regards to what Sukuna's past was actually like. Sukuna could have been, for all we know, literally like a florist who tried to live a peaceful life and literally had like a snapping moment where he just didn't care. Literally, he could... I know no one wants him to be redeemed, but we still don't know what his backstory is.
True. Yeah, and also the demon dancing statue or whatever. Like, and Yuji specifically says, yeah, only locals know about it. Which is, I mean, I get, not weird thing to say, if it's from his place or just a little fun, tidbit of information. But my long theory of that snow art with Yuji holding the sword, and he's a demon lord, as Choso called him. So I was like, man, Yuji's about to do some crazy ass, like, Hino Kamikagura on Sukuna. God, I hope not, but...
Yeah, I mean, the demon god Yuji is something that still trends to this day. Like, I still see, like, YouTube channels literally just add demon god Yuji to the title just for the clicks, because they know it's, like, in the search algorithm. So Choso calling Yuji that was definitely, like, a monumental moment. That I think... Overall, I kind of made a video, and I had a couple people criticize me, saying that, like, saying that Yuji would have reached enlightenment, or Yuji was the first to actually find out what being honored, or what their, that whole idea really was. He was the first one to actually align with Buddhism entirely, as opposed to everyone else. People were like, oh, like, that's messed up. You would say that when characters like Gojo exist. But I think overall the point that 265 was trying to make is that Yuji's philosophy, the kind of idea that Yuji's created of every life has value, even a character like Sukuna of all people, Yuji gave the option to get out of this and be spared before ultimately killing him entirely. Even like a 1,000-year-old serial killer, for all intents and purposes, Yuji says that he's willing to find value in this person's life before taking it. I think ultimately we could see that as like an advancement upon Gojo's indifference or Megami's saving everyone selfishly. I feel like it's like a culmination of everything, and it still embodies his grandfather's wishes, even though it's kind of directly saying that he goes against it at the same time, where he's not looking at death, he's more focused at life.
I agree with that interpretation. And I do like when you bring up that he embodies Buddhism, because really, when he gives value to every life, it's because even if Sukuna fails in this one and he kills him, Buddhism is about reincarnation, it's about your karma you leave behind and the karma you're born into in your next life, which means Sukuna would get another shot to do something else. So he doesn't really, like, he loathes who Sukuna is, but he sees the potential of what people leave behind, and what they could be in the future. I'm not sure if it's strictly Buddhist for Yuji, like in his own mind, but the parallels from Gege are pretty clear to me, at least in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
yeah, for sure.
you get the direct page of Yuji, you know, being right next to Buddha, and everything like that. So I think the symbolism is night and day. And I think it's really what gives him the confidence to be like, to start making demands once it doesn't work. And Sukuna's like, yeah, this is stupid. Why would you take pity upon me? And he's like, all right, well, I'm done mincing words. You know, either I get in my body or I'm going to kill you. I feel like a lot of people are like, well, how does he know he's going to kill Sukuna? Or how did Yuji get such a strong domain that would be capable of that? And I feel like we've seen Megami do basically the exact same thing when put under stressful situations, when visualizing his better philosophy, when visualizing what a better version of himself looks like and adapting what he believes to grow in a sense. He's able to create a full-on domain expansion as what a 15, 16-year-old child, when you have people like Nanami who have been sorcerers since they were Megami's age that still struggle with the concept of domains as a whole. Yet Megami was able to surpass that level of sorcery just by his mindset and improving it and creating and going to that next level of mindset. So I feel like it makes sense that you and Megami didn't even understand barrier techniques. So you have Yuji who understands barrier techniques, has all the makings of everything he needs for the domain expansion, and has also created this mindset that potentially even surpasses his mentors and the people before him. I mean, I think it clearly makes sense that his domain would be this powerful thing. And I also think, that being said as well, well, I just had a brain fart. I completely was going somewhere and I completely lost it. But
Yeah, like the Buddhism thing, like in my last video, that was basically like the big thing. Like I did a bit of reading on it, and like they call like one Sukuna's, hailed as like the fallen, and I think this kind of comes back to like him being something of kind of like what they call a Bodhisattva, which is someone who turned away, deferred their like spot in nirvana to stay and help others reach enlightenment. And Sukuna kind of is the fallen in the sense that he helps people, but the way he does that is through giving them a fulfilling death of how he sees it. Like his Enma 10 hand sign is like Enma is the person who decides if you have to go back into a cycle of rebirth, like the Samsara cycle, or you actually get to enter nirvana. So Enma is like the one who gets to decide, like JJK, if Sukuna, he enters these people's these other like places, like with Jogo, the White Room, and Kashimo, is the great farm fields, the Edo, I think it was Edo period, whichever one it was, and that's kind of like him like granting them a fulfilling death in a sense, and I feel like we just didn't see like say Higuruma's, maybe he's not dead, Gojo's, because I think that was Gege playing upon that body is coming back. He maybe not Gojo, but I mean that's a little faulty in sense. But basically, the Buddhism thing is crazy how like deep of a well it is to kind of research into with JJK's parallels between it. And I mean, I had a lot of fun because every time like Angels, you could look at Bodhisattva, Tengen's a Bodhisattva, all these like parallels, and I do think there's a lot of connections in between.
for sure. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, like kind of even going into what you said, like I feel like one of the major things that can go all the way back to the Shibuya incident that I think we can kind of talk about even a little bit more in depth later is just like, I think Mahito says it best, where philosophy, morals and justice, you can be as righteous as you want, but if you don't have the power to actually grasp it, then you're unable to make that philosophy matter. And I feel like we've now seen the entire monster philosophy, or taking on the burden of everything yourself and bearing that burden, trying to be the person, essentially what Yuji was trying to become, the cog, right, is almost nearly identical to what Gojo was doing, bearing the burden of everything, and doing everything himself because he didn't want to dirty anyone else's hands. Obviously, Yuji's is a different idea of that, but it still kind of has the same sentiment. Yuta then tries to take on that philosophy for Gojo and try to recreate that monster and attack Sukuna, doing the exact same thing they did before, throwing Gojo's body at Sukuna, and it didn't work before. That philosophy wasn't able to overcome Sukuna's, and I feel like that's also why Yuta's failed, whereas Yuji potentially, we don't know what happened, but potentially may succeed.
Yeah, I felt like Yuta became a monster at at thinking of others. He like the sympathy for Gojo. He became a monster for that, but Yuta's kind of seen like by his friends as a saint. Gojo is called a monster by the people around him, but he calls himself the honored one. But the narrator is the person who recognized Sukuna as the honored one. So it's kind of interesting how Gojo called himself that, but those around him call him a monster.
Hmm. What do you think, Quirkless? Oh, go ahead.
I do like that this chapter showcases the way that Yuji's character has moved since like chapter 213, really, or was it 212? Where, you know, they're about to bring back Gojo, and Yuji is saying, okay, I can die after this. Everything will be fine. I'll just do my job. I'm glad I got to play a role. But now we see that Yuji realizes that he's not just a murderer at this point. Like, he tells us straight up here, finally, after like 50 chapters, that I'm not a murderer anymore, basically, or even if I am, that's not my sole contribution to the world. And like that's something he was really struggling with over and over in the whole story, is that he doesn't realize that, you know, your life is more than just like your direct actions and what you understand your role to be. For him, it's the people he met along the way and the people that he impacted just by being himself. And I think that's a huge thing. And I think that's pretty true for like a lot of shonen. And it might not be like the most profound message ever, but I think it's pretty in line with the rest of the story, and it's pretty good message for like, you know, the main age demographic of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is like what, young adults?
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely
Well
agree.
said.
I think overall, like the way that the message has always of Jujutsu Kaisen has always been leading towards, has always been, you know, bring value into life, bring value into the next generation, and also, you know, focus on yourself and doing what you can to better yourself, but also being able to take that power that you've built within yourself and give it to other people and be able to help other people with it, right? There's a lot of different messages that go throughout, like Gojo goes through hidden inventory, he's not able to save Geto, and he realizes that you might not be able to save everyone unless they want to be saved. And the one thing that I think Yuji kind of built, the one philosophy I think Yuji kind of stole from a lot is Higuruma. Because if you think about it, Higuruma was kind of like the prototype version of every life has value. Higuruma was that lawyer that didn't want to use blind justice against the people. He wanted to be that one lawyer, be that one person, even in a country with a 99% conviction rate. He wanted to be that one lawyer that was willing to take on cases that were shut and done and be like, no, I will look through and I will be able to see your light in the darkness. And Higuruma doesn't show up in that last final, you know, montage, I guess you could call it, of all of the dead people that have affected Yuji. So I'm taking that as fingers crossed that Higuruma is still somehow alive. Maybe like he got teleported back in time for Shoko to actually heal him or whatever. I'm going to hope and pray that's the one copium that I can still keep alive. Nobura's done. We've lost that. We can move on to Higuruma Cope.
Nagi Yoshino wasn't shown either. She'll be back 100%.
Oh, stop.
Oh, and Blind Justice is like a fire rapper name, by the way. Or not rapper, but
Blind Justice.
a battle
Justice. Rapper. I like the tag team name for Yuji and Higuruma of the long hand, what was it? Just hands, I forget, it was Fists of the Law or something. I couldn't remember what it was, but I had a really good tag team name for them.
Law and Order.
Law and Order.
Law and Order.
I'm with you, Noop, though, on Higuruma potentially being alive, because he gets vanished away. We don't see his body anywhere. Sukuna's the only one that says, oh, he's dead. And then Yuta shows up and says, oh, I might have been able to prevent Higuruma's death. He's like the only one. There's no really way for him to know unless you go back there. And I don't really see the point in teleporting him away, to be honest, if he's just a corpse. But I mean, they did the same thing to Gojo. But just the fact that they are teleporting these characters away leaves the door open.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like I said, the way that I feel like a lot of Yuji's of evolving from Cog to where he is now, which we'll definitely get into when we come to Higuruma, it comes based off a lot from him. So I was shocked that Higuruma wasn't included in that moment, which I'm going to hope. I thought it was cool that Mahito was included because Mahito is such an important moment for Yuji's character that we'll get into for sure. And I think it's interesting that where Yuji was unable to find sympathy for Mahito, he completely was just like, I'm going to kill Mahito. He still gave Sukuna of all people a chance, I think it completely is just because at the end of the day, Yuji knows that while Mahito was a curse literally born from humanity, you know, he was literally a monster made to kill humans, same as Yuji was a cog at that time to save people and exercise curses. Mahito was the exact opposite, to save curses in a sense and kill humanity. It was in his instinct to kill people, whereas Yuji basically proving at the end of the day that he believes in what he's preaching. Sukuna, despite being the king of curses, despite even considering himself when he speaks sometimes as like the curses, Yuji still, of all people, Yuji at least looks at Sukuna as a normal human being, enough so that he even gives him the option to be spared, which pisses Sukuna off. But I think it's interesting that when he's talking about how there's the only opposition Yuji sees are people that don't see value in that life whatsoever and actively go against that value, which Mahito makes sense. You know, again, that's his instinct as a curse. Whereas Sukuna, even though he sits on the same pedestal, if not probably worse than Mahito, Yuji still gives him the common courtesy of being looked at as a human. Which I think is just, at the end of the day, I mean, it ain't that, if that's not keeping your eyes open as opposed to blind justice, I don't know what is. So yeah, I think him and Higuruma, Higuruma is solely one of the biggest people responsible for Yuji's new outlook, without a doubt, at least to me.
Plus, they also had to, they had to take some food off of Sukuna's plate. So I guess they have to remove the corpses. You never know. It might catch to a panel of him have a Higuruma's foot out his mouth or something.
And I think now, like, with Kenjaku being a thing, I think they're so much more keen to like we shouldn't leave corpses out and about everywhere. We probably should dispose our dead, because we didn't do it one time and look what happened. They also have Naoya too, which obviously I know most of these people are probably going to be killed with cursed energy, but I think at this point in the series we've learned to take care of our dead, even if they're dead.
Anyone who goes through Naoya's memory is just going to get traumatized by Toji.
Oh my god. Do you think they'd come out of that? Like, I don't know why, but I just love the thought of this man.
I'm just scared of Toji now. I think it's interesting when you bring up how Sukuna doesn't really live, like he compares himself to curses and Yuji still tries to reach him. And the most interesting line in this chapter to me was when Sukuna says he expected what Yuji was trying to show him. Like, he expected to see a life like this from Yuji, and he still feels absolutely nothing. Now, is he yapping? Is Sukuna, basically just yapping about not feeling anything? Maybe. But it could be that he's not at a point yet to, accept somebody else's opinion on this, or accept the value in human life. And I think by the end, he might learn that, there is more to there's more to humans than just being tools, or just being, playthings for him to fight. We'll see, yeah. But I feel like that's probably going to be the end of his character arc.
And now with Yuji is staring at Sukuna on even ground. It's not like when back in season 1 he's looking up at him within the inner domain. It's basically Yuji is the equal but opposite to Sukuna. Sukuna isn't gonna respect or listen to anybody. Like how you said, Quirkless, that isn't really on his level. But I think Yuji's finally got to a point where now, an overwhelming sense of self, Yuji now has that in spades. And he's fully 100%, steeled his resolve and his beliefs. So now he can, and he has the toolkit, they say innate curse techniques, 80% of your skill set. He has that. Now he's got the overwhelming sense of self. So it's going to be interesting to see, going forward, how this plays out or what Gege will do. If we cut to Akari and Arame, though, oh my goodness.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, hopefully
Oh,
nobody will cut to Hakari, but I'm really interested to see how the mechanics of Yuji's domain are going to operate, because that's kind of the thing we're hinging on here, is because he says he can kill him, and really, if it is a sure hit like Malevolent Shrine, and it's cutting into the barrier between Sukuna's soul and Megami's soul, then it should be able to just peel him away, or kill him. We'll see, though, because I doubt that Gege Yakutame is just going to have the Benevolent Shrine be a one-to-one shot remake of Malevolent Shrine, just like less malicious looking.
Yeah, I really hope that isn't the case. I sincerely hope that really isn't the case. I know everyone's kind of hoping for the Malevolent Shrine. It's been a thing for so long, but I don't know. I personally wouldn't prefer that. But if it is, then it is what it is. What are we gonna do?
Again?
The way I look at JJK is Gege's already repaid my investment of time. Like, I'll never hate JJK. So I just take the series as it comes, just accept it for what it is.
Agreed.
I felt with Naruto when it was ending.
What'd you say?
Yeah,
that's how I felt with Naruto when it was ending, bro. It's like when the Susanoo from After Death came from Obito, I was like, all right, well, I mean, I guess we're here now.
Yeah, do you think Naruto could last? The Kishimoto would be able to last through the fraud allegations weekly during the fourth grade Shinobi War, like with Twitter, how everyone is these days, so volatile. I'd like to see.
I'm sure
how
he is finished, but yeah, you're right. The culture around just reading media, especially manga, has changed a lot.
It's impossible to get away from. That's really what it is. I feel like it used to be just as volatile. It was just in much more niche places. Like, I remember, like, people said the same, because people reminded me when Bleach was going on, people would literally call Kubo a troll. Like, you'd see so many memes of, like, Kubo as the troll face for just, like, killing characters or whatever, people coming at him for all that stuff. So, like, I feel like it was just more, like, because now everything is so mainstream and on, like, not anime, but just, like, social media, I feel like it's just much more out there. You see so much more of it, as opposed to before, if you weren't in, like, that niche all anime community with people that were so meta into the community that they were just, like, talking shit about the author like that, then, yeah, it was very rare you were in that kind of scene.
Just imagine if, like, say, after death, Gojo was just, like, went to go visit Yuta because they're of the same bloodline, or, have distant blood relatives, and he's like, oh, yeah, by the way, here's my 6 eyes. Bet that. Shh. Don't tell nobody. And then, like, some crazy shit. Like, that's technically Kakashi, ass pull, he pulled a Sharingan out his ass.
Got Obito's soul to give him, like, the most OP armor set ever.
Yeah, like, come on. I mean, like, imagine if Gege did that. Like, if that's how, like, Yuta just opened his eyes and 6 eyes were there. Like,
thanks, Gojo.
Hey, listen, I've seen so many, like, Yuji with 6 eyes theories and everything like that. But ultimately, I mean, it could just be the soul bisecting Dismantle, or it could be something crazier. I would hope that, Yuji's, become unique enough from Sukuna to gain his own kind of power. I mean, think about it. His dismantle and cleave isn't his own. Blood manipulation isn't technically his own. Reverse curse technique is kind of a catch-all to whoever can learn it. So to have one thing at the end of the day be his own, his body isn't even his own. It's all from Kenjaku's working. So if Yuji can at the very least visualize a selfish domain that's purely visualized by him and created by his ideals and ambition alone, then I would absolutely love that more than anything.
I like that take. I like the idea that it's like the only thing he really has to himself. It's like, even despite Kenjaku's malicious machinations, he can still make his domain his own, and Kenjaku can't necessarily account for Yuji's personality, though it does kind of seem like he did, just because he assumes that Sukuna and Yuji are going to be at odds forever. I don't really know how he'd be able to, I don't really know how he would be able to plan that out if he didn't know that Yuji was going to be in such opposition personality-wise to Sukuna.
Yeah, no, Yuji and Sukuna being
broken.
The eye of the storm.
Yokosugetsu.
Oh God. So So yeah, I think 265. It is a shame that it's a break week this week because there's so much riding on this next chapter. For everyone that was waiting after 264, I think the response that we got to this chapter, it really showed you who was in it for the story and who was in it just to see what happens. I think overall 265 that day was like one of the greatest kind of segues into what might be like the final, either the final motions of the story, final motions of Sukuna and Yuji. Whatever happens, I'm very much excited to see it. And I want to give you guys a chance if you have any closing thoughts before we move on to the tier list.
You think JJK's ending is going to be good? I'm curious.
I have high hopes. I'm not really deterred to thinking it's bad. I mean, to be honest, like kind of what we were kind of talking about before, most series, once they start really getting into their last 10, 20 chapters, they just start taking certain liberties just to really get to the ending that they really need to. So it's kind of like I'm able to excuse things as we get closer to the end because I know at that point it's just railroading the story more than it is like not wanting to introduce more things that can lead to more loose ends and lead to more things to explore. Like, all right, we've got to tighten this up a little bit. So if we get the ending in the next 5 to 10 chapters, I would think that would be surprising. I would generally be like, holy shit, I can't believe it's a little surreal that it's over that soon. But yeah, I feel like there's a high chance of me being satisfied. I don't know about Tiberius.
I do think JJK ends in 7 chapters because that would be a complete full volume 30, and it feels like very Gege to just like, let's just end it at 30.
Mm-hmm.
But like I always say, Gege's gonna land the plane, but that plane's gonna be dinged the hell up. It's gonna be a beat up plane, but he's gonna land it.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like it might just end. That's the best way I could put it. It just abruptly ends, and then you have like a montage of the characters who are left alive.
The way that My Hero Academia ended, you can always see that, like, because I see half of the memes and half the people that are clowning on the ending of that series right now are literally like I've seen it on Reddit. Are people that have literally never read the story once. They will literally self-admit to you, "Oh, I've never read the story. I'm glad I didn't read this. This is ass." And it's like you don't understand the ending then if you've never read the story. How it's fully convinced to me that 50% of all people that are going to clown on the ending are people that are going to clown on the ending no matter what. So I'm fully prepared to dive into the ending with my own personal interpretations. I feel like I've been pretty fair. I'll tell everyone from day one what I don't like of the story, what I do like. I don't like Sakurajima that much. I don't like the way Kenjaku ended, depending on what happens to him later. Even if he comes back, I think the whole Takaba Kenjaku, while fun for me, I know a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was fun. I think the Yuta ending was lackluster. I think Higuruma and Kamutoke and all of that are questionable MacGuffins in Shinjuku Showdown. But, I've said that's from the beginning, So if it's bad, I'll admit it's bad. But I still enjoyed the journey.
Yeah,
that's fair.
It's been a fun one.
Yeah, that it has.
I don't know if it'd be terrible. I think like worst case scenario could be like mid. I think the trajectory right now is something that like it'd be pretty hard to grossly mess it up. Like unless you're already someone who quit the series after Gojo died.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're still on the train at this point, you like what's happening. It's kind of hard to really derail.
Story beat wise, it seems like Gege's remained pretty consistent with what he wants to accomplish. Questionable decisions that he may have made or not. I feel like his themes, the ultimate message that he's trying to get through, he's remained pretty solid on throughout. So I feel like he'll probably stick the landing when it comes to that, which is ultimately the main point at the end of the day, in my eyes. So yeah, all right. So awesome, guys. Thank you all for your opinions on 265. I'm very much excited to see what the hell happens in 266 and going forward. I agree where most manga seem to end on like the volume endpoint or like to end on the even chapters now. You could even argue like Horikoshi even, gave as long of an epilogue as he did, so it ended neatly on like a nice set of chapters. I've heard rumors that they pushed Kishimoto to push Naruto to 700 chapters just so it ends on a nice even number. So it's completely possible. It could end on, 270, 280, 275. They usually like to do that, especially when it coincides with the volume sales, and they don't have to make a different kind of thing. That being said, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get into the tier list. I'm gonna give you guys both a moment. If you need to go grab a drink of water, go to the bathroom or anything, we'll do a little bit of pause. I'm gonna catch up on some of these donos, say what's up to chat real quick.
All right, I'll be right back.
Yes, sir. China Doll, thank you for the 5 gifted members. Appreciate the love as always. Mario Busters, thanks for being a member for 6 months. Today is that day. Love the chapter name, and you will not be able to tell me that chapter wasn't inspired by Attack on Titan. Weeb Guru, thank you for the 2. You have a personal and biological mission in life, so some people say. Indeed, thank you for the dono. Untitled 27, thank you for the dono as well. Shout out to my homie Tiberius, a great friend and content creator. Truly Chuya to my Dazai. Uwu. Damn, you got an uwu. That's real.
That's my mom.
That's your mom?
No.
Your mom's throwing uwus out there?
It's a Kenjaku thing.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm pumped to get into this tier list. I'm excited. We already had a decent discussion on Yuji, so starting from scratch, I feel like we'll bring up a lot of really good stuff. If you haven't already, guys, hit that like button for me, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Tiberius.
No, my bad, bro. No, there's a lot of fights that I didn't really like. You kind of like I remember, and I went back before the stream just to look at all the fights like Yuji, was a part of. And it's crazy, like, just the memories or the connections to, like, from that point to where we are now. And just how different of a character Yuji, like, he doesn't go through suffering, he grows through suffering, Like, went through so much.
Yeah, I think Gege taking the risk to make a character that instead of doing multiple training arcs and trying to just make them, show multiple chapters and, halt the pace of the story to train them and make them stronger, Gege deciding to take the risk and go suffering builds character actually ended up paying off. I know, like, again, I've said it before, I know a lot of people criticize that and say it's not real character development, but you said it yourself. I mean, Yuji is not the same person we got from chapter 1 that he is today, not by a long shot.
Yeah, and it's like JJK, the whole point is like you have a power system that's based off turning negative emotions into power. So it's like Yuji gaining this sense of like, enlightenment. Like, that's like how I look at him. He's gained a sense of enlightenment equal to Sukuna in a world that's kind of like or sorcerers who are bounded by curse energy. It's a shitty existence, kind of. That's how they like view it. Like they are the exception, but it's not always for the best.
Toto's speech. I love that, and I definitely want to get into that when we get to that fight, and how much I think it also influenced Yuji's current mindset. There's so many good moments. Toto's another character that we need to like a spin. Like if with every anime and manga getting a motherfucking sequel series, if we get a Jujutsu Kaisen 2, the Toto stories, I will throw money at it. My entire life savings.
How Toto got his groove back.
Give me like a Great Saiyaman thing, but just Toto.
The Toto light novel.
It's just all, but y'all are gonna get all Hannah. It's all Hannah.
Oh my god, that would actually be the biggest troll. Hey guys, here's an entire light novel of this character that I completely fumbled, acknowledged that I fumbled, and then went to go ahead in the future after acknowledging that I fumbled her and fumbled her more. But that's okay. We forgive him.
The best plot twist in JJK was that Toto's 56 million IQ was actually lore accurate.
I love that Toto got literally Sukuna was like, this man is a true Jujutsu sorcerer. That was such a hype moment. Love it.
And you go to Toto's POV and it's just Takada-chan dancing around Sukuna or something, cheering him on. Just some simple do music playing.
Yeah, that anime additional scene that they added of Toto beating the shit out of Mahito with Takeda, just like as like it's literally just him turning around and boogie woogieing him to switch with
Locking
Yuji.
in.
They really hit the nail on the head there with the Toto added scenes. That was like perfect. Couldn't have asked for anything more.
I
But
still want to see Takada-chan versus Sukuna.
listen, an underrated missed opportunity. Takeda as a culling game player, I'll say it to the day I die.
Yeah, you were cooking with that one.
Say it to the day I die. But let's cut to the chase. Let's get right into it, guys. We're going to go ahead and rank every single Yuji fight from beginning to end. But you guys know the drill. Mostly this is just an excuse to yap about every single piece of development that Yuji has gotten from the beginning of the story, from chapter 1 up until chapter 265, where we currently are now in the longest break week of our lives. Definitely not the first time I've said that. We're going to go ahead and start from the very beginning and just give all of our thoughts and opinions on everything that we possibly can. So chapter 1 is not really a fight per se. Yuji versus the very first curse spirits that he encounters. Now, one major point that I want to get throughout this whole entire video is the proof of the matter that I think suffering does indeed build Yuji's character development to becoming a person that he isn't. So chapter 1, this Yuji is a completely different Yuji that we've seen, that we see now. I mean, Yuji is doing his best to try and make friends in the occult club. I think later on, we actually find out, just from what we know at this point at 265, that those were kind of like his only quote-unquote friends, and he didn't really have any other friends. He might have had just acquaintances throughout, unless... it seems like Yuji was mostly just focusing on his grandpa at this point in his life, as much as his grandpa hated him doing that.
I think in Japan, some like I don't know if it's every school or some schools, but they require you to do at least one club. And I think the thing with that is like Yuji chose the occult club because they allowed him to leave in order to go see his grandpa before the visiting time was visiting hours were up. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But nonetheless, I could be wrong as well.
But yeah, if
No.
you gotta pick a club, you might as well pick the Sakuna Finger Club.
Yeah, it all kind of like seems very coincidental in the very beginning that like Yuji, Megami, and everyone kind of ends up in the exact place that's required. But I mean, even later on in the culling game, we see that Megami even kind of wonders this to himself. He goes, you know, now that I think about it, that all did kind of go very according to plan if someone was to plan this. And I think it's interesting too, having read the Jujutsu Kaisen first draft, Jujutsu Sosen, seeing like how much of the original beginning of Gege's vision for the story actually held true in the actual chapter of the story. Like, even though Megami wasn't the Sakuna vessel, it ended up being Yuji. I think Yuji having the Sakuna vessel inside of him as a means to build his character and become that person that wants to save people no matter what, into becoming someone that values all life no matter how despicable or little. I think it makes more sense having a Sakuna inside of him, because now that Sakuna's not inside of him, he can finally look at Megami and go, wow, I wanted to die because I've had Sakuna inside of me and because of everything I've been through. But now looking at Megami, I don't want Megami to die, even though he's got the King of Curses inside of him. So I think it's really kind of crazy, like how we see like Yuji wanting to save people and wanting to embody his grandpa's wishes start off so small in this portion and only get bigger as we go on.
I mean, I agree with you in the fact that it does seem coincidental, but now we know he had like a finger sealed inside of him from birth. It does make more sense, because that was a big question I saw people have for a long time, is how could Kenjaku possibly plan this guy to eat a finger and not just die immediately? But if he already had Sakuna or a part of Sakuna in him, it does make sense.
Plus, twins are, maybe it's a whole like twins are fated to always come back as one. They're all viewed as like one entity in Jujutsu, like with curse energy and how it's separated at birth. I mean, it's more like of a headcanon theory that I had of just, twins are always fated to come back together, which could mean that they become one person, one entity again, and whether that means exiting the story or whatever it may be. Yuji just is the new Tengen, and Sukuna's just bothering him for eternity. However you want to take it, but and that's something I thought about just with the twins thing. Like he's getting I know it's his twins reincarnation son, but kind of in a like that lineage kind of like passed down is coming back to haunt Sukuna. His deeds of eating his brother.
Yeah, literally. And I think one thing that's very prominent in this is like, even though it's kind of subtle, you do see like the almost superhuman athleticism that Yuji's capable of. We see it as far back when he does like the shot put and he does the 100-meter dash or whatever run he does, and then he scales the hospital building or the school building and then punches this curse like it's nothing, running in no fear. I think Yuji, as much as Yuji has changed and as much as Yuji has grown, the kind of himbo, I'm going to save my friends no matter what, and I'm going to put my life on the line to save people because that's what my grandpa wanted and that's what my grandpa taught me how to do. I think at the end of the day, as much as you can say Yuji has grown, he definitely is still Yuji. He still has that personality about him. And I think that's definitely great for him, because in a Jujutsu sorcerer world, you can so easily lose your original personality. And I like to see that Yuji has grown significantly while still maintaining himself.
Yeah, realizing like his grandpa's thing, like a fulfilling death, like or a proper death, like those, surrounded by people around you. And I mean, for one, technically, if he does die, there are a lot of people waiting on him to come cross over. His airport is hella full. But two, it's more about like Yuji isn't living like, to you said, to your point out is, he's kind of not even like it's different now. His ideology and how his thought on the whole matter is different now to then. And even though that was like chapter 1 stuff, it's more about like Yuji realizing this whole thing isn't about a fulfilling death. It's a fulfilling life. It's about living, not dying. It's about how you live, not how you die. Excuse me.
So overall, what would we really say? I mean, it's just an introduction. It's not even really a fight. I mean, I'm willing just to give it like a C just because it's not really a fight. It's just simple, but it's a good introduction.
The actual fight, I mean, the curse spirit was lame, so it's a solid F.
Okay. Damn. I was trying to be nice.
Like, are we just talking about the fight itself and like not the development?
What it means.
I mean, I guess you could mix them together.
Yeah, mix them together. What it means for us in general.
All right. Yeah, I agree with C then.
This is the talking about the curse. Oh, talking about that one. I'm sorry, I was tripping. The first fight's really Yuji and his genetic trauma. But I think that's the first fight. Mm-hmm. But this fight, I'll agree to see its introduction. You kind of give it a little bit of break, but
yeah, I think
was a badass kick.
I think we see a lot more of Yuji's development in the next quote-unquote fight, which is with Yaga Masamichi, the principal of Jujutsu High, when he's taking his like entrance exam, if you can really call it that, when Yaga like tests Yuji's resolve as a person and if he's even willing to step into this Jujutsu sorcerer life. And I like this because it's a great way to kind of like ask Yuji the question, like, are you doing this just because you feel like you have to, or are you doing this because you actually want to do this? One of the most important quotes, I think, in chapter 2 or chapter 3, episode 2, is when Gojo says that on a good day, being a Jujutsu sorcerer is finding your friend that you knew for life, recognizable after being mauled by a cursed spirit. So I think that like it makes sense that they would have to test this teenager's resolve. And are you really willing to do this, or is it better off that we just kill you now?
It is kind of a terrible job, and I do like that they bring that up. Because, like, unlike a lot of series, like in Naruto or Bleach, should bring it up is like, okay, you can get up in the ranks here. I mean, you can still get, your special grade sorcerers and things like that. But primarily as a Jujutsu sorcerer, you're stuck fighting curses, and no one's ever really gonna thank you for it, except for like the 40 people that know what's going on. And the whole point of Yuji is that he's totally naive at the beginning of the story, and I like he changes like his fundamental ideology of I want to save people doesn't, but his how naive he is about the Jujutsu world changes, and I think this is the first step towards that. So I'd probably say like C or B.
What do you think,
Yeah, I'm
Tiberius?
sorry. I'm dealing with my dog. I'm sorry. Let me get him.
You're all good. You're all
which
good.
which fight is this one?
This is Yaga versus Yuji, the very beginning.
Oh, okay, that green little Mike Wazowski looking thing. D.
Damn.
Yaga's don't even get me started on Yaga.
The unregistered special grade Yaga, come on. But no, like
Nah.
the one
his
thing
introduction to school was cool, like basically being challenged of the like what's your answer? Like that's how he's like testing him and all that. I just personally when I thought it was like, oh, so it's it's what's Gara's brother's name, the puppet dude
Konkoro.
from yeah, it's like man, trying really hard to be cool, but puppets just aren't it, buddy.
Yeah.
And I mean his like but I mean I just wasn't huge on it. But I could see you giving it more, but D for me, just so I could bottom out the tier list a bit.
Yeah, I mean the cursed puppeteering and like Yaga as a whole was probably Yaga is an underutilized character that no one harps on enough. I feel like everyone harps on people like Yuki or Nobara, decent fun characters that we had some amount of time with. Yaga really got nothing and got the short end of the stick. But ultimately, I think one of the biggest things that came out of this was Yuji realizing that if he didn't do this and didn't become a Jujutsu sorcerer and just tried to live his life normally, especially with what he knows now, he wouldn't be able to live with himself. Even if he was to walk away from this now, he knows that he'd be flipping the pages of some manga one day, and there'd be cursed spirits killing people, or Sukuna would be out there killing people, or maybe Sukuna would take over one day and just start murdering people against his will. Yuji, as much as he knows that he can't ignore it, and he, probably would rather not step up in this moment, or as Yaga even says, like, are you going to blame your grandpa when you die because you think you want to save people and you say you're doing it because he told you to? Because I think that's ultimately why Yaga questions him really much as well, too, is he's like, oh, he's like, why do you want to do this?
On the matter.
Yeah, he's like, well, my grandpa told me to save people. And he's like, are you going to blame your grandpa when you die? So it's making sure that Yuji's resolve is his own rather than just his grandpa. And I think this is like the beginning of Yuji becoming like his own sorcerer almost, and starting to mold a philosophy even where like instead of just listening to someone and taking their opinion, it's almost like Yuji, instead of just I'm following someone else's opinion, he kind of makes his grandpa's curse, quote unquote, his own, as a reason to keep on fighting and a reason to find other Sukuna fingers, rather than just his grandpa told him to, but because now that he's caught up in all of this, he has to. If he ignores it, he's just a bad person by proxy.
And plus, I can get him. He has to ask this question. Because I mean, think about it. Like if he's just doing it because his grandfather told him to, how's he gonna know he's gonna make the right call when it comes time to like jump in action and save someone over his own life or something like that? Like you have to be 10 toes on this. You can't say you're gonna be a sorcerer and then next thing you know you see a curse pop up like that curse from the one that popped up on that soldier that came up from the subway. Like if I see that shit, I'm running. But like Yuji, I get why he's why he's like obviously I get why he's asking the question, but just in a sense of like what it relates to the actual job itself and Yuji's particular case, but I see a fight that I would rank C, and I don't want this fight and that fight on the same tier, so I'm being a bit of a hater too.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the cursed puppet utilization is very lame overall. So you know what? We can definitely if we need to move it later, we can stick with D for right now. I'll agree with you, Tiberius. Quirkless gave it a C. We'll both give it D's.
And if you asked us this question 2 weeks ago, before like Yuji's kind of coming into like his own, ideology and his own beliefs. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that's the beginning of the story. That's what set everything in place. But maybe I'd rank it a C then. I don't know, thinking about like what it meant in that moment to like what it means now. But that doesn't really matter in a sense because Yuji's character was just about his resolve and doing the job itself.
Gotcha. So I guess if that's the case, then I'd probably move the introduction fight down as well to a D, which I guess coincides with everything. Corkless gave it an F.
Why
We
don't
gave
we
it
just throw him an F?
all with
Yeah,
Froman,
fuck it.
all an F. Okay,
He made
wait.
Panda. Yaga made Panda.
Nah.
So we put him in F for
Yaga.
that.
I think for what the Yaga fight stands for,
No,
I think it at least deserves to be in D. Whereas you can't change your
Yeah.
vote now. You can't change your vote now. It's stuck in.
I'm just curious, what other fights here we think are going to land in F? besides
Well,
these?
let's see. We've got Special Grade Finger Bearer up next, which I think is definitely something that doesn't deserve to be an F. I think it's probably one of the better fights because this is when, if Yaga is the person that asks him that question, the special grade Finger Bearer is the person that kind of holds Yuji's feet to the fire and really tests that resolve up against death itself, because you can say what you want and talk as bravely as you can against someone who's ultimately at the end of the day not going to kill you. But when you're up facing against a curse spirit that literally has no instinct besides kill what's in front of them, and is going to kill you and everyone that you know that you came into this detention center with, I feel like Yuji's subtle moment where he's like in the air, one arm down, and he's like, a week ago, I was, running track at high school. Now I'm about to fucking die. So I think this is a big fight that really ultimately he comes out on top on, where he actually resolves and dives in deep to what he believes in and just bites his tongue and says, fuck it, this is who I am. I'm going to take this negative emotions and use it to fight back, as opposed to just succumbing. Even though he really, really just wants to surrender and just be a normal kid and go back to normal.
Yeah, and the Finger Bearer is kind of like the first time we see Yuji like crack. It's like the Finger Bearer to Mahito to like Sukuna with Fuga, like after Choso. It's like we get these like 3 stages of Yuji and how he acts after, like what it takes to kind of wheel him back in. I mean, we're lucky to have Toto there the other 2 times. But like and also like the previous 2 things, like I don't even really consider those like really fights personally. And like, but, like obviously I get why they're here. So, I mean, I'm kind of rating, I'm rating those compared to like all the rest of the on this board are just about, it looks like all of them are actual fights from this point forward. Cause I mean, how many punches were thrown in the puppet one?
1 or 2.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying why it shouldn't be on here, but like that's just, also comparing it to like what's the other things. I don't want to. I could vote all these moments an A or a B easily because I love Yuji, but like I want to see actual like disparity between like the top and the bottom. Like because I mean both of those, the first 2 we ranked. I did enjoy. I love those moments in the anime, but compared to like all of Yuji's, the rest of the things that we're rating it against, I don't want it all to be B, and it makes A feel less special because it's 1 spot up,
Right.
Like that's how I kind of look at the tier list. All right, chat. So y'all calm down. Y'all calm your tits.
This is
No,
the
I'm not
first
saying-
fight. This is the first fight we get the running gag of people losing their arms in, which just happens throughout all of Jujutsu Kaisen. It's pretty much like what buckets of blood of your shoulder are in Bleach to Jujutsu Kaisen.
So true. I never even really caught that. You know what I mean? Like that literally, from this point on, Gege really does enjoy just cutting hands off at the wrist.
It's just an easy way to not kill someone.
What are your thoughts on the development and everything going on with this fight, Quirkless?
I think this is one of the best parts of the story, personally. I don't know if the actual Finger Bearer fight itself matters that much. It's really more about like what happens after with Yuji, Sukuna, and Megami. But mainly, this is the point in the story we finally get the pacing picks up. Like right after like those first 3 episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen, I've watched it with a few friends. They all get bored at the very beginning, and then they get interested right around here. So I'd put it a little bit higher, like maybe like a C or B, just because of that. And it really does set up the whole story. It's what directly sets up the binding vow takes place later. It's like one of the most important events in the story. But like, if I'm just ranking it a fight, like I put all of these in F. If I'm just ranking it as a fight. If we're talking about story importance, I'd say it's like at least a B.
Well, again, we can rank them based off of just like the moments in general and what they mean.
I'd say B.
Okay. And Tiberius, what was your ranking for it?
I'd probably go C.
Okay. So B, C. Yeah, I definitely agree where it's like this really is like the first turning point for Yuji. This is like the first moment where he actually has to fight with the idea of being a sorcerer, you know? The special grade is a very childish, very non-intelligent, very basic, just throwing cursed energy around everywhere. And Yuji can't even handle that, but Yuji wants to get a bunch of fingers together and take on the King of Curses 1,000 years ago. I think this is one of the first times that, again, Yuji's confronted with the obscenity of what he's trying to accomplish. But even in this moment, we do see the small sparks of a character that we get a lot more of later, which is the character who says, you know what? This is my situation. Fuck it. I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to be as strong as I can for the people around me and do what I can. And the way that it ends is, even though Yuji himself doesn't beat the finger bearer, he lasts long enough for Megami to escape with Nobara, which was ultimately Yuji's goal in the first place. So I think you can technically say that Yuji won this fight for sure. Somewhat, in a way. He got one over on the finger bearer. Obviously, Sukuna then takes over from there. We get the whole moment with Sukuna and Megami, and then Yuji ultimately switches with Sukuna to sacrifice himself, save Megami and Nobara, and tell them both to live long lives, which, like Corkless said, that brings us to the binding vow, and the short scuffle with Yuji and Sukuna, which ends up becoming the Enchain vow. And I think one thing that's really, really interesting, it's not on the tier list, but I would give this fight a C tier with the finger bearer. But one thing that's not on the tier list is how I feel like 265 is almost like a close mirror to what that moment of the Enchained vow getting made was, with Yuji and Sukuna kind of meeting in the inner world, in Sukuna's inner world. Sukuna kind of taking advantage of him and just telling Yuji what's what. We're going to do this, this, and this. And if you don't do it, then I'll kill you. And then he slices his head off in one go. And now the tables are turned completely, where Yuji's looking down on Sukuna and basically saying, you know, we're going to do this and this, or you're going to die. All in all, I feel like this really is the catalyst for Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole. And I agree with you, Quirkless, where like this was definitely... like after the Nobara small stint and like episode 2, it kind of does get a little slow, but like this and how quickly how quickly shit hits the fan, definitely pulls you right back in for sure.
You know, it's interesting to think about like the beginning to like from that, you know, fight with them in Sukuna's inner domain and how it was Sukuna's, you know, and now we're looking at the end of the series, but they're in like Yuji's like separate domain. And it's pretty crazy just to think like maybe it's how they, because we see this is where Yuji was like raised, where, you know, he's familiar with, and then maybe that's like a depiction also. You could look at Sukuna, the type of like, not exact area, but the kind of like place that he was raised in, you know, just bones, just, you know, just like a desolate land of death, you know, basically. I mean, even though Sukuna was like the calamity. But no, and I mean, as far as like the other like things with the fight, how, you know, it's not talked about enough. Megami is Mr. like, oh, I'm gonna unalive, you know, in a video game myself. Let's, you know, people want to talk about Yuji, okay? Yuji was throwing his life, you know, casually. It's just my Megami agenda, don't mind me.
You're all good. But
no, it's a good fight though. I do like what the fight brings, and you know, it's also, what was this, the first time you get to see all three of them together? no Gojo. We know Gojo is out the country, so it's like, oh, we know some shit's about to pop off. Like the stage is set to like, and I think the resolution of that was handled really well. And are we putting Sukuna and Yuji's like inner domain scuffle attached to this? I thought it was
Yeah,
gonna be on the
kind of
list,
overall.
but
That's not really its own thing specifically. I just wanted to harp on that while we were on the topic before we moved on to the versus Mahito arc.
yeah, I'm cool with C
Yeah.
because both were short. My bad. Continue, Noah.
No, you're good. You're good. So after the binding vow, everything like that, Yuji enters a period of time where he's in hiding. All the higher ups, most of Jujutsu Society, Nobara, Megami, they all think he's dead. He didn't come back. Gojo decides to keep it a secret and has Yuji train with Nanami and train using the sleeper bear to kind of control his curse energy better. And we see Gojo versus Jogo. We see a lot of that stuff. By the time we get back to Yuji is investigating transfigured humans and going through what he doesn't know yet is Mahito and Junpei's footsteps and slowly following behind them with Nanami. And in this brief little moment before we do encounter Mahito for real at the school with Junpei, Yuji does encounter transfigured humans once in this moment. Now, again, this is a very short fight. It's really just one punch thrown. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because this is Yuji's first, we talked about the finger bearer being Yuji's activation, Yuji's wake-up call, his first moment of beginning his sorcerer journey for real. This is, I think, when he takes his first step and makes his first, upward motion towards growing as a sorcerer, because this is where he unveils his Divergent Fist. I don't know if any of you guys have any special thoughts on Divergent Fist, but the reason why I love Divergent Fist so much is I love that it shows how great of a teacher Gojo actually is. Because if you look at Gojo's students, you have characters like Hikari, specifically who has his weird curse energy control. When Yuji interacts with Todo later, Todo yells at him for Divergent Fist. He says, it's unrefined, it's unclassy, you need to change that and fix your curse energy manipulation. Which I imagine Todo would probably say the same thing to Hikari because of his rough-edged curse energy. Where Gojo looks at it, even though it's untraditional, and goes, that's kind of cool, Yuji. You could probably make use of that and turn it into a cool thing, as opposed to being like a traditional mentor and being like, oh, you're doing it wrong, fix it right now and don't ever do that again. So I think, one, it shows how good of a teacher Gojo is. This isn't really a Gojo video, but I feel like it shows how great of an effect having a teacher like Gojo can have on someone like Yuji. I don't know if any of you guys have any, sound bites on this small little moment in Yuji history, but
Gojo's perfectly imperfect.
it's true. Everyone loves him, but everyone hates him at the same time.
I like seeing him fight with Nanami here, personally, when he's fighting the transfigured humans. I also love the idea that Nanami, like, you see Nanami as a stern guy at first, who, like, doesn't really, like, he kind of seems like he doesn't care that much about people initially, but then he's like, he talks about, okay, well, it's only natural I protect my students, it's only natural the adult puts himself in the way of the children when you're fighting. And it's kind of hard to translate this in anime because it happens all the time. If you really look at it in real life, you're sending kids to fight to fight horrific monsters, which is pretty messed up. And I just like the idea that they bring it back to reality there with Nanami.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Nanami's mind. Nanami's a man. He stands on his beliefs. He doesn't. He don't talk about them. He's just about. He's about them. I mean, obviously he does say those things, but like, in every day, like, he gives off this, stoic, kind of, it does seem like he could be a bit of a prude. But, he has his ideals that he stands on. He automatically thinks of, like, his own morals. He stands on those. He lets his actions speak.
Yeah, I like how I definitely agree with you, Tiberius, that they showcase he's jaded, but then they give you the reason, like, he's jaded about the life of his Jujutsu sorcerer, but he's simultaneously trying to protect Yuji from the harsher realities of that, even though he knows it's pointless.
Yeah, he's trying to preserve Yuji's innocence, almost. And he even mentions this after the entire Mahito arc later, where he's like, I wish I could keep you as a child for as long as you could, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have to become a Jujutsu sorcerer. You're gonna have to become an adult, and ultimately Nanami realizes that it was wrong of him to do that, and he should have just looked at Yuji as a Jujutsu sorcerer from the beginning. But I mean, that has everything to do with Nanami's
And
dark past as well, and how he kind of had his childhood ripped away from him with Hybera dying. So I think you slowly can see like how Yuji kind of interacts with Nanami and starts to kind of take after Nanami and grow so attached to Nanami as well too, where Nanami's having like a great influence on him.
it didn't. It wasn't. It didn't Nanami. He was the one. He kind of went out of his way to reassure. After he found, like, after Shoko calls him and they find out that they died when they were transfigured. That's why he tries to, like, and he tells Yuji, "Don't worry, they weren't human," or something like that. So, and I mean, even if that's not the case, this I don't think Yuji kind of thought about like having to take another's life, like a human life, up until that point. It's been a while since I read the beginning, but aside from like the actual fight, yeah, I'm not sure if y'all remember if Yuji ever brought up like taking a life before that moment, like a human life.
I think this was the start of that kind of character arc, actually, now that you mention it, because you're right, this is the first time we kind of encounter the transfigured humans and find out that they are, in fact, humans, not just curse spirits like Yuji thought he was going to be fighting this entire time. Obviously, we even see this much later and come to full fruition in the Origin of Obedience arc. But this is kind of the jumpstart of that idea as well, where Yuji begins to realize that the job that he thought, not that he thought just being a Jujutsu sorcerer was going to be morally gray, but it's a lot more gray than he thought. Especially when he finds out what the hell Mahito's doing, and especially as we get into the Junpei arc and everything going forward after that. But yeah, I think this is an important moment, even though it's a very lackluster fight. I still think it's a pretty important moment for Yuji overall. Like, I think it would probably go in the same tier as, like, the Yaga fight, where it's like not really a fight, who cares, but Nanami's development into Yuji and Nanami's interactions together, the start of that growth, as well as the beginning of Yuji's trauma surrounding actually having to kill human beings, and if he's actually prepared to make that jump from just exercising curses, I think is much more dynamic than, let's say, Yuji just being a good guy in chapter 1.
It's crazy. It presents like all the things Yuji's going to struggle to deal with and what it takes for him to overcome to reach the point that he is now. It's crazy. Like a lot, these are all the things that always troubled him. Very, very early on. He's like, here's Yuji, here's what he's gonna have to overcome. And I mean, obviously the cog quote don't come until like 130 something, but just in general, I do like that Mahito, I mean, we're about to get into Mahito, but yeah, I agree with you about the rating, just as it's short.
It is cool to see that both Yuta and Yuji are two characters, like the only two characters we really have that weren't raised in Jujutsu society whatsoever. So the way they come into it's a little different, and they're a little bit more shocked by the brutality of it. Or maybe less so Yuta, because he, JJK0 isn't as dark as JJK is, at least to me.
I mean, JJK0 opens up with Rika shoving his classmate, like, stuffed that dude into a locker until he was like bleeding out of it.
Yeah, I don't think the themes are that dark.
Oh
like,
yeah,
even if like there's some messed up stuff that happens.
Yeah, no, yeah. I agree.
It really is a big contrast from like characters like Gojo, who are born into sorcery. Like Gojo in his teenage years is literally just a cocky prick who doesn't even care about humans. To a certain degree, right? As much as he has to for his job, he's fighting curses to exercise them. But at the end of the day, he's like, who cares about a veil? Who cares about people? Geto, we could kill all of these people if you want right now. I probably wouldn't care about it if we did it. To ultimately, you have a character like Geto, who I'm pretty sure had non-sorcerer parents, ended up being the justified one, and ended up being the one that broke under the pressure. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, Quirkless, is it also it shows the difference between characters who grow up in sorcery and are just raised around it, and the brutality and the disgustingness that comes with that world, and characters who kind of join already kind of after their formative years, after they've already kind of become who they are, and then have to change and adapt themselves to fit the new world that they're in. It's definitely interesting that I never really even thought about that either.
Yeah, especially like the reincarnated sorcerers too, as well. Seeing like how they view, like seeing the different views that they present, across the Cullen games. That is a good point to think about. Yuji's where he came from is to now, and then like I didn't even really think about you to either, Quirky. That's a good one. It's a good think
Probably
piece.
quirky.
Yep.
But
Quirky.
it all kind of goes and kind of rears. It all kind of culminates into Yuji's relationship with Junpei, right? Hold on one. I'm getting these spam calls are crazy. I do not know what's going on here. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Yeah,
Give me
you're
1
good,
second,
man.
guys. Let me mute if you guys want to talk to chat real quick. Sorry.
The stream's gonna see him like just throw a fit on the phone. All right. No, yeah, but I didn't even really think much about it, like where they came from, and like obviously, I'm so like jaded, or like not even jaded, excuse me. I'm so used to like programs, these high schoolers in anime saving the world. It's like when I watch it jump into like a shonen series and I see, oh, here's another high school protagonist about to save the world from this 1,000-year-old, big bad.
And they're
But
usually inhumanly okay with like the horrific violence out of nowhere.
yeah, no facts. That's what I said. Like it's a good think piece, like because that's one thing that I think gets lost a lot of times. And certain people they read so much, they're chronic. They just expect certain tropes, and when things kind of deviate from that, some might like the change, some may not. It's very interesting how like the fandoms kind of look at certain points or certain like Yuji, how Yuji's like not viewed as people view him as like not the main character, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is absurd.
But he's like dealing with all this stuff head on, as a high schooler.
Yeah, I'll go on a separate tangent if we're talking about until Noam's back. Until you'll see a lot, especially when people talk about like, oh, this character's not the main character, or he's or we're dealing with a flubbed writing. The most hilarious thing to me is like usually at the end of the day, like when you get into like severe criticism of a series, especially like Jujutsu Kaisen went through this recently, where people say like, oh, okay, this is dumb, or oh, people haven't read anything else to like this. And you see this not just in anime, you see it in games, you see it in movies, where at the end of the day, people want to feel smart for liking something they consider smart. And when like something is trope filled, or they think that their favorite thing is the best thing and only a smart person can understand, really what they're trying to say is you're dumb for liking X, Y, or Z. And that's something that's always bothered me a little bit when you're talking about like people complaining about tropes and people complaining about the writing in a series, or people complaining about the popularity of a series. I'm kind of curious how you feel about that.
I'd say it sounds like you're describing a One Piece fan with a Luffy profile picture. I'm just kidding, but no, like the way I've always looked at it is, Demon Slayer is like kind of a, I wouldn't even say Demon Slayer. Really, I've always looked at it as I really don't care. I read for my own my own enjoyment. So I don't care how others feel about this, that, or the other. Like I'm a Megami stan, still am. But when it comes terms of like people just being more, I guess, volatile in certain aspects of stories, I usually see where like their favorite series are, and it's always from my point like the people that attack the more standard. There's nothing wrong with standard format shonen. If you like the overpowered character, like just they learn through fighting, which I mean that's kind of Shonen Jump. It's a young targeted for like the 12 to 16 or something like that. I also try to keep that in mind. But it does seem like people who tend to feel differently are usually like the seinen bros, just guys who they kind of just want that like deeper story or the more adult story. But when you have JJK who's like giving people what they want or what they've been asking for, they still seem to have an issue with it. They're just I ain't gonna lie, I forgot your question, Quirkless.
It's fine. I was just
I
talking
I,
about
I, I was yapping so long.
That's okay.
Hello, I'm back.
We have no op here now to completely
Yeah.
diverse.
I am
Jesus.
back. Just fucking lending companies trying to fucking give me a loan or some shit. I don't know. They call me relentlessly. They're literally calling me literally 24/7. Like they called me 3 times in a row. But that's why I'm like, who the fuck is calling me? But anyway.
That's all you gotta do to get a loan from you? Damn.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say is everything that we were kind of talking about kind of culminates into the Junpei arc and how Yuji kind of interacts with Junpei Yoshino, which kind of what we were just talking about, you know, characters that are born into sorcery, whereas opposed to they're kind of thrown into it against their will. Junpei is a character who kind of displays the example of the worst possible outcome of that, just because Junpei, a character who was bullied aggressively to the point he's literally got multiple cigarette burns on his forehead that leave permanent scars. He is in such a dark place that he takes all of that out, and doesn't know where to release all of that anger, all of that emotion. He literally does not know what to do with it. And then one day when he's trying to watch a movie, he stumbles upon Mahito, who kills 3 people who Junpei wasn't really fond of to begin with, who I imagine he knew from school, and goes, hey, I can teach you how to also kill all of your bullies as well. Bad influence, terrible. But then we see Junpei meet Yuji, the bright bulbed, you know, spirit of life that he is, and almost saves Junpei for a good moment. Almost saves him. But unfortunately, Mahito's grip was too tight, and he completely corrupts Junpei entirely and turns him into for lack of a better word, turns him into a school shooter. You know, the joke is there. I'll say it. I'll make it. It's there. I mean, Junpei's downfall is believable. It's very relatable. It makes very sense. It makes a lot of sense. That wasn't a complete sentence. And it's sad that these 2 characters that could have been best friends have to oppose each other like that, to the point that I think they captured such a perfect dynamic that so many people, myself included, literally could have seen Junpei becoming a staple rival character, potentially becoming a staple villain, a staple anti-hero, or at least having some larger impact on the story. Gege himself admits that he didn't really like the Junpei part, and he didn't think it was his best writing, but I disagree, and I really, really like the Junpei part. It's what got me into Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole, even more than the Finger Bearer Curse did. I'm really curious what your guys' opinions are on the dynamic between Yuji and Junpei, and just how this short fight meant so much in such a little time.
Yeah, I think this is like the first person that Yuji feels that he did not save. You know, we get down the line, the Nanami, the Nobar, these people that die in front of him, and you know, Junpei is like the first person that, you know, Yuji literally made a connection with, right? He saw it as like, you can come to the school, like they given me, you know, this like purposeful role. You know, there's all these things that he wants to try and like, you know, kind of take him out of like that life that he was in and bring him to a, you know, where he's made friends, you know, give him a reason to like move forward. And then you just see like Mahito is, you find out he just views them as playthings, you know, and it's like the fight itself was very short. Yuji was putting a pause on Junpei, but it's what stems from this fight for me. Like this fight was real big for me in the when I was first reading the manga. This was the fight where I was like, oh, and I think what it stems and going forward and how Mahito plays a part in all this. You know, the catalyst behind the scenes that Yuji doesn't even know about. You know, Yuji's never seen him before. It's our first time we get that badass the Yuji where he's like, you know, about to crash out on Mahito where he punches him for the first time. as well as we see Sukuna. Sukuna in this moment, like when he gets turned into his Monsters Incorporated form, Yuji's like asking to, he didn't save him, so he's like now he's got Junpei on him, and he's asking Sukuna, of all people, he's asking Sukuna like, help me, heal him. I'll give you whatever you want. And like Sukuna's just like, nah, like it's like he takes joy out of the pain that like Yuji's suffering at that moment. And I mean, we get why, but I think this is like a B for this is like a high B for me.
I hate Junpei personally.
Me too.
Oh, you're like gay. Okay.
Yeah, he was like he was obnoxious, and the moment I saw him, I was like, this guy's gonna die. Though I feel for him because anime bullies are like, I mean, they're hardly bullies, they're like straight up nearly murder you. Apparently, like they toss him into a closet. At least in the anime, I forget what it was like in the manga. They toss him into a closet, like beat the shit out of him, and say like, "Oh, clean yourself up, kid."
The worst part is like I'm pretty sure it's actually pretty realistic. At least in Japan, they go fucking crazy over there.
Nagi Yoshino, what could have been though? Man,
I can't speak from personal experience. I don't know what it's like to be bullied in Japan, but like if that's true,
damn. Oh, my bad.
That sounds pretty bad. Like, but Junpei, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it was too obvious he was gonna die. Like the moment he shows up, I'm like, oh, you're part of Yuji's character arc. That's what it felt like.
That's so you weren't surprised when he did die. You weren't like one of the people that thought Junpei was gonna last forever as like a staple character.
And the opening is wild.
When they show him and like oh man, we're all gonna be together and happy, I'm like, oh, he's gone. Like this is some Obito stuff right here.
That was some nasty work on Mappa, boy.
Yeah, the OP, that was revolutionary. I don't think that's ever been done before. That was one of the biggest fake outs of all time. I respect that. That was some big motion. That was some big motion. But yeah, I'm surprised. Okay, so it's interesting to get the different perspectives of like how much like we both kind of clued into Junpei and how much you're like, yeah, you know what, he was a character that only served a purpose for a time, which ultimately it seems to be that's what Gege felt as well. And it is interesting that, of all people, Junpei is one of the faces that Yuji thinks about when he's making the speech to Sukuna about his fulfilled philosophy that he has now. Junpei is one of the first people that he thinks of. And I guess it makes sense because Junpei is one of the first people that shows Yuji that, we're not all... We don't have a set role. We can be different things. Junpei was one step away from being a good Jujutsu sorcerer just like Yuji. If he never met Mahito, things could have been very different. The idea that Junpei was so wishy-washy and in 1 second was a major villain, to the next getting sympathy from Yuji and potentially joining Jujutsu High, to the next, if Mahito didn't plan to kill him, Mahito potentially could have continued to manipulate him and mess with his mind even further. Like, I think Junpei is like one of the first examples that we get of Yuji's concrete idea that people aren't defined by one thing or one role. They can be many things all at once, and if anything, they can be one thing and change, which is, it makes sense why he would give Sukuna the sparing motion that, people aren't, we're not all a monolith.
I will say in retrospect, sorry, Tiberius, you want to say something?
You go ahead, brother.
Oh, thank you. I will say in retrospect, if we have Junpei survive, he probably would have survived long enough to become a Sukuna victim instead. Like, there's really no way this guy was making it out of JJK.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Smoker is not meant to leave One Piece, unfortunately. Oh wait, I gave him the smoke ability. That wasn't his natural smoke ability. Wow, my head canon is mixing with actual canon. I'm losing
also, his
it.
curse technique sucked.
Yeah.
That... I mean, I think it just plays all into like the Junpei itself. I think if you notice, like the themes with the previous select entries we put up, it's all kind of like building up this like tower, like this glass tower. Like it's it's gonna be built up until like Mahito and his conclusion and Shibuya, but it's like everything's setting the stage for like Yuji's like perspective, or like how the perception he sees like sorcery, and how it gets skewed with each arc, with like him showing that curses, like it gets worse. Like the abyss is bottomless. Like Mahito's this like mirror onto death for humans, and he sees like it's kind of fitting for like Yuji's like first big bad like direct like um verses would be like the curse of humanity.
Yeah, definitely. I think you gave it a B, Tiberius Quirkless.
See,
All right, I'll give it a B. I put it above the Finger Bearer Curse for sure. And I think a lot
give
of
it
what
an F. Give it like average at the C.
no, you've already locked in.
He hates Junpei that much, almost as
True.
much as Rico maybe.
Yeah, they were both very annoying. Toji came in that hidden inventory and like saved us really.
Oh God. So I think like a lot of what we were talking about kind of segues into the fight with Mahito Yuji has, where it's Yuji and Nanami versus Mahito. There's also that short little one-on-one fight that they have together, which is definitely one of the major staple fights in like the first season, the first half of the story. The dynamic between Yuji and Mahito is one of the most iconic things in the world, and I think Yuji's rage over Junpei dying, and the fact that even though in this moment Yuji can't piece together why he hates Mahito so much, I mean, rather he doesn't really need much more of a reason than he just killed his friend, but ultimately we find out later in 265 the reason Yuji was so annoyed and the reason why Yuji couldn't look past what Mahito did was because Mahito, as Tiberius said earlier, just looks at people as playthings. He views human beings as toys that he can mess with, and that's why Yuji, no matter what, when he says the words, "I'm going to kill you," it made every word before seem like a lie because it was the truest statement that he's ever said before. And it's also words from the future, almost words from a future Yuji, and a future Yuji in perspective, that he doesn't even realize he's clued into yet. And just the fact that he's able to stand up against Mahito, even for the short time that he does, is great. Obviously, Sukuna is an interesting tidbit in this fight because he protects Yuji involuntarily and protects him from Mahito's idol transfiguration. Because without that, Mahito would have just as easily transfigured Yuji and killed him as he did Junpei. So, and I also like Yuji, after everything, getting over his trauma of killing transfigured humans and doing what needs to be done to save his mentor Nanami and continue the fight against Mahito.
The one thing that also, just going back to the Junpei for a second, we also get about like how Mahito like idol transfiguration, and how that changed Junpei into he had a brain for sorcery, or was able to do it but wasn't hardwired for it or whatever, and changed it, which is important obviously in the Culling games. But the Yuji's kind of realizing his sense of self. Like that's how he truly feels. He just was misjudged and clouded by like this journey to like have a fulfilling death at that point. That like no, like that's he really he has a distaste for people who try to like snuff out people who are trying to live a fulfilling life. Like early on, Yuji's always felt that way, but now like that overwhelming sense of self is there. But the Mahito fight, that's what
I think this one's benefited from the fact that it has some of the best anime OST in my opinion, and it had excellent animation to it as well. Like the Mahito fight when he opens up his domain expansion, that's one of my favorite scenes in JJK. So it's hard not to put this one in S for me, personally.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. It's definitely Mahito's domain expansion, Mahito growing as well as Yuji also growing in the same time. They really are like it starts the two sides of the same coin very early, in a sense that you don't even realize that Yuji and Mahito are both like neck and neck leveling up together without even realizing it. In the same fight, that while Yuji may not level up, power wise or curse technique wise, he still levels up to be able to bite his bite the bullet and kill people if it requires it, which we'll even see later down the line in Origin of Obedience, as I mentioned before, the fruition of all of that. But
And with like this, Yuji's just he's kind of like that instinctive, intuitive fighter. Like he doesn't come off as like a brainiac or anything like that, but he's aware of like the whole thing with Sukuna and all that, and basically diving into what most people wouldn't even consider breaking into a domain. But Yuji, like maybe it's because he wasn't raised as a sorcerer, that perception centuries ago that we ranked, that like him not being in jujitsu, obviously by this point he's already learned like domain expansion from Gojo and Jogo fight, but that doesn't mean like it's like that fear of domains is like ingrained in him. So him just diving, jumping head in to get rid of Mahito, save Nanami, make the decision to take the kids, those little kids that he had to, on the roof, was clutch. And this is the first episode I ever rewatched after it was over, but I'd still give it an A. I got the other Mahito fight as a S.
Hell yeah. Definitely. Yeah, no, both times, anytime Mahito fights, I think it's a top tier fight. But yeah, this is definitely one of the bigger moments for Yuji. It's definitely one of the more enjoyable fights that are on the list for sure as well. Yuji and Nanami tag teaming, we get that first Juju jumping moment that we've ever had. Like you said, Yuji breaking into Mahito's domain was definitely an interesting tidbit, where it may be because he's just he was willing to do something because he didn't really understand it, and it shows that gung-ho personality, but it also shows that he's got a perspective on things that a lot of people may not have, which can benefit him in ways that most people wouldn't expect. So I think we got S's, we got A's. I think we could definitely put this one in an A, and like you said, potentially the final Mahito round can definitely be an S tier. So
Yuji should know that he did save Nanami. If he ever felt like he didn't, like Yuji, I think Yuji's a very, very hard judge on himself. You're always your biggest critic, but I mean he really gives himself no breaks.
Got that inferiority complex.
Yuji definitely did save Nanami here. You're not wrong. Where like Nanami would have died, I think a lot of people were expecting Nanami to die. So, if Yuji definitely saves a lot of people throughout his track record. I think this is it's definitely a big instance of it. He wasn't able to save Junpei, but I mean he was able to save Nobara and Megami before in the detention center. He's able to save Nanami here. And then later on, we'll even see as we get into the exchange event, he saves a lot more people. In that, in that respect. But the first part of the exchange event, before we get into the big Yuji moment in that arc, is when Yuji meets up with Todo. And one of the big things that I always take from this short little Yuji and Todo scuffle is just it shows one how durable and how powerful Yuji's special body truly is. The fact that Yuji is like as small as a twig. He's very tiny, but the man is able to compete in strength, combat ability, and everything with a gorilla like Todo. This man is huge. He is yoked, and Todo's like he's doing better than me. He's flexible. He's putting out more power. I do like the fact that it shows Yuji isn't just I think this is the beginning of Left, Right, Good Night, where we just see Yuji's pure martial arts and pure hands, and I do enjoy this for the short moment. Also, of course, you have Yuji and Todo meeting. You have that great, memory that never happened. Just beautiful, two characters that were meant to be together.
And we all learn Yuji likes a tall girl with a, I'm trying not to curse anymore, Chad.
Oh, you're okay. Very, very, very mature of you. I'm proud of you for that.
I'm bullshitting.
No. Oh.
No, you're good, bro.
For Todo, I'm not a big fan of the first fight with him. I obviously like the Hanami fight a lot more. I mean, you get some interesting stuff where you get to see that Yuji's curse energy control is pretty strong. Even Toto's like, okay, he's not like some nobody. There is something off about him, even if he isn't like, even if he weren't a vessel. But as far as the actual fight goes, probably like a C for me. That's fine.
And we also see like how Toto is viewed by the other students as well. Like they know, like just basically it gives the impression that oh, Toto's not one to really mess with. And so like when you see Yuji, get basically he's taking like severe damage from that dude. Like he is getting his head like stomped into a tree. And I misremembered this. I actually just looked back like a couple days ago. The memory that didn't exist, I thought happened when he was getting his face kicked in. It didn't actually start until after he Toto heard Yuji's answer. So Yuji's still like eating, just it's not like Toto stopped from kicking his face into a tree because the memory happened. It's like that happened, he walked away, then Yuji stood back up and was like ready to keep going. So like I was like, oh, Yuji, he's raw. He got some aura. But I'd probably say this one will to rate this fight. I mean, I say like a low B. Yeah, I give it a B.
Yeah, I agree. Though the one thing that I think is really cool too that both of you guys mentioned is like one, it does show Toto's dominance and how like even though the other students don't like him, Toto is like, all right, well, what I say goes because I can beat all your asses. But another thing is how quickly Yuji kind of grasps cursed energy manipulation. While you can say time and time again, Toto is a great teacher. I mean, he clearly is. He's got the philosophy for it. He's got the intelligence, the 530,000 IQ, and he's got a great way of getting someone to understand what he's saying, despite his vocabulary being very impressive, to say the least. So I think it's interesting to see, like, Yuji listens to Toto once, and he's like, wow, all right, I've got it. And then instantly masters curse energy manipulation to the point that he can't even accidentally use Divergent Fist or intentionally use Divergent Fist again, at least until later in the Shibuya incident. So he completely fixes his curse energy manipulation, and then later on, we see the fruits of that labor kind of take shape where Yuji, on the same exact day as this, is able to hit a Black Flash when he fights against Hanami, showing that one, Toto's influence is already major on Yuji, and two, that Yuji again is just a jack of all trades and was born to be a sorcerer, even though he didn't realize it and wasn't born in sorcery. So I agree. I could definitely think we can give the Yuji and Toto short scuffle a C. But how do you guys feel about, since we're talking about the Black Flash and Toto's influence on Yuji, how do you guys feel about Yuji, Toto versus Hanami? I know, Quirkless, you said you love this fight.
Oh, this is an easy yes.
Same.
It's got everything.
Choreography, big bad, a cool curse.
It absolutely gas intro, especially with the music.
And Toto's like not holding his hand. That's what I like most. It's like, no, you're not getting any help from me. He's like, dude, I've been a sorcerer for a minute. I watched a bunch of people die. I mean, he's not saying that, obviously. I'm memeing, but like the fact that he won't go and like he didn't boogie woogie once. Like, he didn't try to help. Like he had to land a Black Flash in order for Toto to jump in. That's what I mean. Obviously, he has the main character plot armor, but I think that really hard to nitpick this fight. So raw.
Yeah, Toto had very much confidence in his brother to hit the Black Flash, and he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna step in until you hit that thing. I know you can do this. I believe in you, and I'm not going to hold your hand through it. You can do this. And you can say that's, tough love, but you can also say that's, strong
Sorcery.
teaching. Sorcery. Yeah. At the end of the day, we can go all the way back to the Finger Bearer curse to see that the world isn't going to wait for you. Curses aren't going to wait for you to become better. They're going to kill you whether you're good enough or not. So you need to be good in the moment and do whatever you can to get good in that moment. Go ahead.
Can you imagine your first part-time job and they're like, yeah, this drive-through line isn't going to wait for you. But it's sorcery, it's crazy. Like These teenagers.
Todo, even Gojo says later in like Jujutsu Koshin or whenever they play the baseball game, like Gojo I think even asks like, Todo, how old are you again? Because just like the level of like Toto's mentality really is beyond insane. Obviously we get the 530,000 IQ moment. We also see that Todo is borderline psychopathic with his hallucinations of Takada just showing up out of nowhere for no reason. But it all in all creates like a great way for us to fall in love with not just Todo, but just this fight in general. I definitely agree with Quirkless. If we're just ranking Yuji fights in general, this is probably what I would say is one of the best, definitely an S tier moment for sure. Just specifically because Yuji and Toto's dynamic is perfect in this moment. I know later Yuji kind of denies that he doesn't know what was going through his head. He's like, I don't know, I was feeling the moment. I don't know what any of that brother stuff was, but I was just kind of going with the flow of everything. I think it's
honestly,
go ahead.
My bad, Noah.
No, go ahead.
Say Todo is just a jujutsu sorcerer.
Yeah,
that's the best way to describe him. Like your earlier point, it's overwhelming sense of self,
weaponized psychosis.
He really does. He really, and to the point where it's contagious on others, completely contagious on others. I love the brotherhood. I love the dynamic of the two. I love Yuji basically breaking Nanami's Black Flash record. I love the now that I've read Hunter x Hunter, I absolutely love the kind of reference that Gege does with Nanami explaining the Black Flash, how it's almost nearly identical to when Zeno Zoldyck explains. I forget what he's explaining in the Hunter x Hunter thing, but it's literally the exact same scene. They're both drinking tea and coffee and just casually explaining one of the craziest things that's going on in the middle of the fight. The anime did this fight well, and I think ultimately it's a great way to show like not just how much of an influence Todo has on Yuji as a whole and becoming a real Jujutsu sorcerer and growing, but again, it just shows. I think it just harps truly on how fast of a grower Yuji is and how quickly and how realistically, as much even though he wasn't born in this world, he was made for it.
He did adapt to his curse technique, which we know it's kind of like disorienting when it's used on you, and Yuji's just over here doing combos with it.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But yeah, so Quirkless, do you have anything left to say before we move on to Origin of Obedience?
About the Hanami fight, I mean, the biggest thing I enjoy is that we get to see the usage of curse energy. We can see that curse energy that have constructs, things like Hanami's giant roots can come out of the ground. They disappear instantly. They're like, wow, that was entirely a construct of their curse technique. I think that's kind of cool. We never really saw a mechanic like that. The only time we saw like these giant manifestations were things like Mahito using his transfigured humans. So I think it moved the power scaling along. It moved the power the power balance along. That's the wrong word for it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I like what you mentioned too, because one thing that we didn't even harp on is like Hanami has their short development in this fight as well, where you could even argue that's because Todo is a Jujutsu sorcerer. He's contagious. His feeling is contagious, where Mahanami for once feels a moment of bloodlust and actually feels like they're enjoying the fight. So yeah, I think overall this was such a beneficial Jujutsu Kaisen Jujutsu sorcery fight in general that like everyone in the fight was feeling it and actually ended up developing and growing in this high moment. Obviously Hanami, lives to tell another tale, not for much longer. I'm pretty sure in an interview with Gege, he admits that he wishes he just had Gojo's Hollow Purple just kill Hanami in this moment instead of just having her die in Shibuya. But even if that was the case, they really served as a great villain in this moment, and a great fold for Yuji and Todo to kind of bounce off of. And yeah, I love it. There's not really much more to say other than this is like definitely one of the highlights of season 1 as a whole, without a doubt.
Her art in the manga Hanami has some of the best. Like Gege's drew Hanami some of the best drawings he's done. If you go back and look at it. Like, man, that one where like that wood ability is going over the school, and it's like Kamo and Megami are about to clash when they're fighting, and they stop to look. Like that drawing and that spread from Gege goes crazy.
So we have Origin of Obedience up next, or mostly just focusing on Yuji and Nobara's tag team fight against the brothers Kachizu and Esu. And this is kind of like the fruition, this is like the boiling point, the big moment of killing humans, of Yuji essentially having to realize that this job isn't, black and white. I may actually end up having to kill people that aren't all curse spirits. And Nobara also is there within this time to kind of share that burden and share that pain. And it's good to hear that for once, unlike the Mahito arc where Yuji was kind of facing this trauma alone, this is the first instance where Yuji actually has a friend beside him that says, "Hey, you're not alone. You and me will be accomplices in this murder together." And I love it. It shows that of all things, Nobara was a character that was more willing to understand Yuji than really anybody. I think even reading the light novel and seeing her interactions with other Jujutsu sorcerers also shows that despite Nobara being gung ho, she was one of the closest people to Yuji of all, and someone that would have accepted him no matter what. So it's nice to see them have their moment together. Their double black flash. I love this fight. I'm not sure what I would give it, but I'll wait till I hear your guys' opinions. What do you think, Quirkless?
I think the Remember soundtrack adds a lot to this fight, at least in the anime. I mean, I think I'm a big music fan, so music adds a lot to a story for me. That's why I like Attack on Titan so much. I think it adds a lot of emotion, and having Remember in this fight scene, especially with the black flash, especially with the choreography of cutting back and forth between their respective panels, I liked it. I liked it a lot more. I liked it in the manga. If it was just the manga, probably like a B for me, but in the anime, at least an A. Especially since we finally get to see Nobara actually do something before she dies.
AMV moment for sure.
Yeah, I think with this, I think Nobara is the highlight to this entire part. With she's kind of, well, we see her for sure unhinged, right? She's stabbing herself. Like she's aware of her ability and how it works, the mechanics of it, and she's basically telling it, like, oh, it's a bad matchup for you. But the thing, other thing with Nobara is about her like standing for what beauty is to her. I thought was great. But on Yuji, that's what we're talking about. The Yuji, I just like that he's, to your point, Noah, with him coming to terms of like being aware in the moment, the weight of the moment, like knowing like I'm really about to like pop this dude off this truck, this exhibitionist off this truck real quick, and he's aware of it in the moment. So we see that it's still with him. Like he can't, like Nobara was whatever. She's her normal self. Killing to her it doesn't weigh on her, but I think like Yuji seeing someone on his level, like he's been with her for a little bit at this point, but not for too long. But so when you see like a classmate go through something that you're going through, it kind of hits different than like a grown up telling you, like, oh, everything's like that, da 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 da. It's like, oh, maybe this is the state of the world. Like my own classmate is just, whatever about killing. And the double black flash went super hard. I'd probably give it a B. Yeah, I give it a B.
What did you give it, Quirkless?
I give it an A.
Okay, B, A. Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that you guys are saying. I think Yuji, it shows growth in the fact that Yuji, instead of hesitating, he makes the kill shot and simply just apologizes for doing what he has to do. And I think this is where we really start to see the cog mentality begin to form and take place over his original personality and the way that he views things. Because now this is a Yuji that was, again, in Versus Mahito arc, he still killed the transfigured humans, but we know he struggled with it. In here, it's almost like where he still had that struggle, that internal debate of whether he should do it or not. It didn't cloud his judgment in realizing that these two people are enemies. They're trying to kill us. I have to do what's right and save my friends and save Jujutsu Society and save the world around me that I know it. I have to protect what I know and what I love. And I think this is where we really see that begin to take over Yuji's inner debate, and where he stops questioning things and starts just doing and starts having action. Something that we'll see ultimately culminate even further in the Choso fight. But I think it's very interesting that we see the beginning of it, where Yuji, again, even though he's apologetic, he still does what he has to do, and Nobara is just there at the end to comfort him and make him feel better when he's questioning himself after the fact. So I think it really shows that, like, this is the beginning of Yuji beginning to harden his skin, beginning to truly become a Jujutsu sorcerer. The same Jujutsu sorcerer that Nanami tells him he is after Mahito's arc. When he says, you know what, you are a Jujutsu sorcerer. Don't let anyone tell you differently. And I also think just the idea of Origin of Obedience as a whole is a great segue, especially as the finale of season 1. I think it's a great way to show how far Yuji, Megami, Nobara, these 3 sorcerers that we started the journey with, have come since episode 1. Seeing them barely be able to fight grade 3 curses, you know, have that big struggle at the detention center with the special grade, which we see the Finger Bearer come back against Megami. I love Origin of Obedience for showing, hey, we've come this far, and now we've grown enough to where we can beat special grade sorcerers. Or not sorcerers, special grade curses. So, yeah, I think there's a lot going on with this fight. I'm willing to give it an A. I would definitely probably put it above the Yuji Junpei fight, probably on the same tier as Yuji versus Mahito round 1 for me.
Yeah, put B. Yeah.
I still agree with A.
So that's 2 A's. So going forward after Origin of Obedience, we do take a very small break from Yuji being the main character. We go right into hidden inventory. We focus on Teen Gojo, Gojo's past with Riko, Geto, Toji, all of that stuff. Someone argued the catalyst for Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole, because it's the whole reason Kenjaku can even do what he pleases. After that long period of wait, then we go into Evening Festival with Mekamaru and focus and finish his story and get another awesome Mahito fight. And it's not until, I think, maybe 10, 15 chapters or so, maybe 20 chapters or so after we last see him, that we see Itadori Yuji with Mei Mei, Wee Wee, and Yuji goes ahead to fight the semi-grade 1 curse, which apparently is officially named Kogai. I will never call him that. He's the grasshopper curse to me, and that's what he'll always be. I love this fight simply because it's a great reintroduction to Yuji as a character, and it reminds us of where he's at as a whole. This grade 1 candidate sorcerer who has come into this world with this new burgeoning philosophy, and just how strong he is and how well he's adapted into this world. Even Mei Mei gives him the props that she didn't think he could have exercised the grasshopper curse as fast as he does. So I think, even though a lot of people don't really like this fight, I like it just because it's a great, again, in my opinion, a great way to bring Yuji back into the center stage and remind us where he's at. I don't know if any of you guys feel any differently about this fight or have any other opinions.
Kusakabe comparison is, I like, so that, like, we didn't realize how good of a glaze that was until, like, what, 253. But comparing him to Kusakabe is, like, very impressive, because we don't even know Kusakabe at that point, really. So it's, we get that, and plus 2 arms versus 4 arms. We also get that, like, no matter, like, the tricks and, like, dirty tricks or anything, if your skill is so much greater than that person, it doesn't matter what they have behind their back. It doesn't matter what cheap trick they'll try. You'll just go above it. And I think we're seeing in the Sukuna cycle, if you will, the Sukuna is just so much better than them that, like, a lot of the stuff it's taking all this to chip away, to chip them down to where we're at now. But I feel like a lot of that kind of harkens back to this a tad bit. But yeah, nothing too crazy. I'd give this one a C.
Definitely foreshadowed the 2-arm versus 4-arm for sure. Definitely the beginning, the training Yuji needed to fight Sukuna full on. What do you think,
Kogai
Corpus?
is the big brain.
My opinion on this fight is going to change entirely if he does the exact same thing to Sukuna, where Sukuna goes in to punch him, and he says, I have, like, I'm trying to hit him. I have more arms than him, but I can't. If that happens in, like, the next chapter, this is an easy S. Right now, I give it, like, a C. Because, I'll be honest, I don't care about bugs. I like the Kusakabe glaze, but it's a giant grasshopper.
Hey, but it's a freaking smart grasshopper.
I mean, I guess relative to other grasshoppers, it is very smart.
I agree with the C though.
I think I think C makes sense. I think the grasshopper curse I think it fits what it needs to do. It's just a dumb semi-grade 1 curse that has a secret dick thrust attack that Yuji completely obliterates. I definitely think C works well. I think it sits right on the same line as like the finger bearer, Yuji and Todo, where they're like very much fights to show where Yuji is at and confront him with things that he may not have confronted before. And that, again, we see, I think this is one of the biggest fights in Shibuya before we get into Mahito, of course. Everyone loves it. Yuji versus Choso. Yuji against his big brother, who he doesn't know is his big brother. Not only, I mean, so much can be said about the choreography, manga, and anime. So much can be said about the dynamics and the themes that are getting played in the background of this fight. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, this fight for me, what I remember most fondly out of everything is a moment that kind of harkens back to the finger bearer curse when Yuji gets his liver pierced by Choso's blood meteorite. Yuji starts to go through the same thing he went through before with the finger bearer curse, where feelings of fear, thoughts of craziness and everything kind of fill his mind, where he goes, I'm going to die. My major organ got hit. This isn't going to go well. Holy shit. Holy shit. And then it's like he kind of stops himself, slams his foot on the ground and goes, nah, I'm not going to do this again. He goes, this is where I am. This is who I am. If I die right here fighting Choso, trying to save Gojo, at the very least, I can take this cursed spirit out and give my friends a better chance of saving our sensei in the long run. And I think this is the first time where we really see not just, Yuji being willing to do things he doesn't have to do, but we see real growth in his character, because this is one of the first times since the finger bearer curse that Yuji's actually met with full on death. That he just, can't avoid. And instead of breaking and cracking under the pressure, he remains strong. And I love that moment. And that's the most, that's the biggest impact of this fight for me. But I'm sure you guys have your own, opinions and perspectives on this fight as well.
I mean, Choso, the anime, first of all, it's kind of hard to separate it from like how good of an episode that was. In the manga, I liked it. I liked how tactical it was. I liked the whole usage of the water that was still maintained in the anime, but the animation took it over the edge. I feel like my opinion on some of the later fights will probably change a lot more too once they get an anime adaptation. But right now, Choso versus Yuji, probably like the best singular episode for fighting besides maybe Sukuna versus Maharaga we've seen in JJK, in my opinion. So probably S. Let's put an S there.
Yeah, and y'all touched on everything that I kind of basically was gonna say. That redefining moment for Yuji as like a jujutsu sorcerer, like this is my favorite fight today. Like even now, it's still my favorite fight. So I ain't gonna yap any, S easy.
Yeah, completely. I think the dynamic that Yuji and Choso shared, Choso realizing at the very last moment before killing Yuji that they are related, not realizing and getting all those memories in that moment. Sukuna not even being willing to come out and save Yuji in the last second, I think is also hilarious. I think this is the hardest that Yuji has fought since the finger bearer curse. And again, I just love seeing how he stares into the abyss and hops right into it, as opposed to hesitating like he does in all of the previous fights. This is the first time where he kind of smacks himself together and shows that he does have his own sense of self. And immediately afterwards, I put it in S. Immediately afterwards, this is where his sense of self that he's built up to this point gets tested, and it kind of becomes something new entirely. Because after losing to Choso, Sukuna wakes up. No surprises here. We know what happens. Sukuna eliminates an entire large portion of Shibuya, kills hundreds, if not thousands, of people in one large malevolent shrine, drops Yuji off at the big, ground zero of that moment, and then lets all of those memories flood into him to the point where Yuji literally is vomiting on the ground from the idea of killing all of those people. And I think it's interesting because we do see a little bit of that prior mindset pushing him forward a little bit, right? Where because even after this, after he has his short moment where he breaks down, cries, is freaking out, he goes, oh, I've got to keep moving. I have to fight. He's emotionless. He doesn't believe what he said. He doesn't even believe the words that he's saying, but he knows he doesn't have a choice. He just has to do it, right? Until Nanami dies, Nobara dies, and he is in his worst state ever. I won't yap about this. I've yapped a lot about the last Chosa fight. I won't yap a lot about this fight. I'm sorry. It's one of my favorites. What do you guys have to say about this fight before we place it?
Mahito versus Yuji. I mean, Mahito's really the front runner prior to Sukuna. He sets up the Soul Kaisen. We get into that later. It's one of the most important moments in the entire series. One of the most important villains in the series. On top of that, we get the temporary exit of Todo in this fight, alongside Yuji having a better showcase of his black flashes than ever, him really starting to understand how Curse Energy works even more. Mahito's arc is finished. Kenjaku sucks him up into a ball. It starts the entire Culling games. It's one of the most pivotal moments in the entire series. It really is arguably the most important moment in the series prior to Gojo getting sealed, which happened in the same arc, obviously. Say after Gojo getting sealed. This one's an S. And it also has all the Skyfall in it. It's endless.
Yeah, yeah, it's for sure an S. And I want to touch back. One thing I forgot to mention is how Sukuna views like Yuji's loss to Choso. It's Sukuna. Sukuna, I think, was always aware of that that potential that Yuji had, and it's just shows like how Yuji views things. But I thought always thought it was interesting that when I first was looking through it, I was like, I don't see how Yuji could have beat Choso, but that's a different conversation. But for the Mahito fight, I mean the tag team for now, this is considered with Todo and all involved, right?
Yeah, this is the entire fight.
Okay. Now with just the black flashes that he hit, we could talk about the black flashes at the end of the fight, which were obviously pivotal. But the black flash that he hit on Yuji on Mahito early on, Yuji got hit with a black flash for the first time in this fight, and he ate that. I mean, Toda had to come give him a poem to lift him on his feet. But I think everything that what y'all said, the anime just went crazy. We get Takada-chan moment again. I also liked how the soul polymers or isopolymers or whatever they were the glass cannons that they were that fought Todo. I thought it was a cool Todo moment that he beat one of them with a coat hanger that he put his cursed energy on. And I think it all kind of just plays into future events and everything that y'all said. It's easy S tier.
Easy S tier, without a doubt. I think from beginning to end, it's one of the most interesting fights of all time. That's why it's my favorite. I mean, from Nanami dying to and I think the anime did this so perfectly, of Yuji and Mahito before the fight even begins, of them both yelling at each other at the top of their lungs. I think I literally still get chills from that anime scene, because it literally is, even before the anime came out, I think I posted a tweet, I could probably find it for the edit, of me saying, as long as they get these two voice lines perfect, season 2 is a 10 out of 10 for me. And they
cried too, I think.
They did. It was so good. From beginning to end, after Nanami dies, Yuji fighting Mahito, Mahito manipulating all the different transfigured humans in crazy different ways to get one over on Yuji and still continue just breaking Yuji's spirit down more and more with pretending humans are actually still alive, but they're just transfigured. And Nobara jumps in and Then Nobara makes the mistake of following Mahito and gets clapped. And then, yeah, like you said, Mahito amasses and feels his soul and hits Yuji with a black flash for the first time, gives Yuji that crazy philosophy of this isn't, a war for you to prove, you're morally right. This is a war of truth and justice. In the end of the day, whoever wins is the one who's right. And I think even now we see Mahito's words proving true throughout the entire story. I know there are a lot of people that constantly tell me that I'm incorrect in viewing Mahito's philosophy as fact, but at the end of the day, even though Mahito was a villain, and even though Yuji defeated Mahito and overcame Mahito's philosophy, Mahito was still spitting facts. I think we can learn a lot from, I think we can learn just as much as we learn from our villains that we do from our friends and the people around us and the teachers and the role models that we choose. Mahito is right, at least until Yuji gets the strength to beat him. You're not strong enough to beat me. You being in the right and being the one who has the moral high ground does not make you stronger than me. You won't be stronger than me. I will kill you, and it doesn't matter how right you are. At the end of the day, when curses roam the earth and humans are gone, people are going to look fondly on me as the winner. History is told by the winners kind of narrative, and it's true. And then once Yuji kind of creates that new narrative, that new philosophy that is stronger than Mahito's, which ultimately, if we find out, is the Cog mentality, Yuji finally coming to terms with who he is and what he is, maybe in a negative, unhealthy way, but it's an improvement nonetheless, where as opposed to Yuji feeling sorry for himself and feeling sorry for the people that he has to kill and feeling sorry for things he has to do and just hesitating and being worried about it, Yuji accepts Jujutsu Sorcerer life. This could be everything to do with the speech that Todo gives him of worrying about the deaths that happen could muddy the memory of the people that come before. You are merely someone that exists to continue the goals of the people that die before you. Nanami died, Nobara died, but you are there to carry their will after, which I think is the perfect birthing of the Cog mentality, where Yuji, instead of finding value in himself and finding value in his life, he takes Todo's words to the extreme and says, okay, my emotions, myself, nothing matters but me doing what needs to be done to ensure I save the people around me and give them and make sure their deaths don't end up as shitty as the people I wasn't able to save. And I think we see Mahito's truth proving right even now in 265, Yuji versus Sukuna, where if Yuji does end up beating Sukuna here, it won't be because Yuji's stronger than Sukuna. It won't be because Yuji's, physically more powerful. Yuji's philosophy and what he believes in is ultimately stronger than what Sukuna believes in. Sukuna literally lost the moment that he was willing to accept Yuji as an equal, accept Yuji's philosophy for the very first time, take into consideration another person's feelings and what they may mean, and want to utterly destroy them. Sukuna lost the moment he accepted Yuji's philosophy was valid because Yuji's philosophy beat out. And I think that's what I get from this fight. I think there's so much that you can get from this fight. Again, it's my favorite. I yapped for just so long again, even though I said I wasn't going to, just because there is so much you can pull from this fight.
The speech, I'm you speech. It's like my favorite MC speech, man. Like, he's just saying, like, look, this is what you asked for, Like,
yeah.
And now he's like, he was the one running away from, Yuji. Yuji was on the prowl. And Snowmad, the demon god, the sword, the art, it all ties together. I'm like Charlie in that meme from Always Sunny. The demon swinging sword.
Yuji is I think one of the coolest things. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying, I was just gonna say that when it comes to the whole "I am you" speech, Sukuna, like in the case of Sukuna, he kind of says the opposite. He's like, we're not the same. I mean, he doesn't like outright say I'm not you, but he tells him like, I loathe you. We have different views on people. I thought maybe you can understand, but they don't understand each other at all. And even though Yuji and Sukuna are like literally the same, they have the same potential. So I just found it like a little bit of an interesting thing that he kind of is Sukuna, but not in the same way he was Mahito.
Yeah.
Are you saying he's baby with cleave? This
He
whole
might just be.
time.
Yuji might have been baby with Cleve this whole time. Yeah.
Scissors.
But the I am you speech really, I think, holds true to this day that Yuji and Mahito really were just two sides of the same coin. I think I said it earlier in this video where just at the end of the day, Mahito is a quote unquote cog that will do whatever he wants in order to make sure curses survive and humans die. Yuji, vice versa, is the exact opposite. But I think it even goes deeper than that, where Yuji and Mahito ultimately, I mean, they both have soul powers now. I think at the end of the day, like the IMU and Yuji and Mahito being two sides of the same coin goes a lot deeper than just philosophy. I think they genuinely, just as Quirkless, you said that Yuji and Sukuna are basically the same. I think Mahito and Yuji leveling up together throughout the entire series, going on their own separate journeys of discovery, and technically both uncovering, you know, true portions of their soul. Even though you could argue that this wasn't, the cog mentality wasn't Yuji's true soul, he still had growing to do. I think them kind of both culminating together and crossing paths, this was the perfect end to their dynamic entirely. And the way that his impact is still felt to this day, to the point where even in 265, he's remembering Mahito in what brought him to his new outlook on life. It makes sense. I think Yuji and Mahito will always be the same.
The tag team with Megami isn't on here. I just realized. All right.
Oh
Yeah,
shit,
no,
Yuji versus Awasaka. Yeah, I missed that.
I mean, it wasn't a crazy fight, but
I
you know,
did
it's got
indeed
Megami
miss
in
that.
it. And
Yuji and
has
Megami's last
Yuji
fight. Yuji and Megami's
Yeah,
last
has
duo
Yuji
fight.
ever won a fight by himself? Like just straight one-on-one? And I'm not, this isn't like a shot at Yuji, by the way. But
Well, he beat
I don't know.
Grasshopper, so that's
Oof.
definitely one.
That's a resume. I'm just
He
like-
beat Haba.
Haba, yep. And his girl, Haba and Hanyu. Haba, Hanyu. Yeah, because like I was just thinking about that. I was like, I wonder if like Gege almost almost gives like Sukuna back his like RCT to be able to regrow his arm like almost instantaneously. So that way Yuji gets his like, just like to Yuji get that I guess for the reader to feel kind of like it's paid off. Like Yuji, obviously we had to, you know, tick him down a whole lot, even though he just got his RTT back. But I don't know, y'all ever thought about how Yuji's never really won a one-on-one against a more notable villain? Because even against like Hikari, like I see Hikari's fight, Yuta's fight, like Hikari, he just lets him punch him really. And Yuta, I mean, that's not really a fair matchup at that point. How y'all feel about him in that scenario or that situation?
I mean, Jujutsu Kaisen's always been like juju
Oh,
jumping, and I mean, one of
There's
my
nothing wrong with
favorite
that, by the way.
one of my favorite JoJo main characters is Giorno, and I think he also has literally only like one solo win, and every other win is like him being allied with someone or helping someone else get their W. I think it makes sense depending on the character. Like Giorno, I like it because Giorno is meant to be that leader. He's meant to be that ally character. He's not meant to be someone that wins on his own. He's meant to be someone that, you know, builds the people around him and helps them grow and be better people. And I think you could kind of say Yuji's the same, although not the themes aren't, like I said, that I don't think that's the main theme of Yuji's character, but I think it's okay. I don't think an MC needs to get solo Ws. I think as long as they get wins, it's fine. Toto being a major staple of Yuji is great.
And I don't know if JJK has ever presented itself as a series where Yuji is like that guy. Like this is where the main character is going to grow to be stronger than every big bad. It's more about him like overcoming like Sukuna, you know, it's about like, you know, him on his journey, like his sense of self and coming to this point. But yeah, no, I was just wondering, what do you think, Quirkless?
To add to that, I agree that he doesn't really have a ton of direct solo wins, but it does feel like the characters that help Yuji are usually there to support him, and he's not just supporting them. He usually gets the finishing blow. Like even in the Mahito fight, at that point, Toto can't even use Boogie Woogie there. He is purely playing support to distract him for a second. I think it works.
Oh yeah, for sure. I thought, like thinking back, because I'm a Yuji stan, and it doesn't bother me because, like I said, I don't think JJK presents itself like a story for the main character to just beat everybody or just be by himself. It's kind of like the friends you made along the way, like Quirk was said earlier in the stream.
Yeah, it sounds cliche, but that's kind of how JJK
No,
goes.
no, yeah, yeah. It's all built up, all the sacrifices, everything, all the connections, they play into each other. Yeah. No, I was just wondering. My bad to derail it.
No, you're good.
It's fine.
So, kind of going into what you were saying, as Yuji kind of takes on this full evolution here and becomes this cog, this new person, and we see him after Shibuya kind of dealing with everything that has happened, Gojo staying sealed, Yuki kind of somewhat making like a save Gojo team, not really. The kind of having to meet up with all the other people. I don't think Yuji even knows where Megami is. Yuji is just with Choso alone. And this is where Yuji does get his demon god moniker from Choso, with Choso admitting how strong Yuji has become after Shibuya incident, not just from eating 15 fingers of Sukuna and having all of that curse energy slowly just absorbed within him, but again, from that philosophy growth, that character development, and we know that's very important and influential for a sorcerer to grow in power. It's all about a sense of self and having a strong sense of self. And in that moment, this is kind of the catalyst for Yuji meeting up with the group that goes into the culling game. Yuta is making plans to quote unquote kill Yuji, and we get a small scuffle between Yuji and Yuta. And I think this fight is really cool because it just shows, again, it's a reintroduction almost, and it's a reset of, okay, this is where neutral ground is, this is where base Yuji is, this is where his character is, this is what he's going to need to learn going forward. Now, obviously, what do we learn from this fight? Yuji's great at sorcerer combat now, to the point that he's even able to tell Yuta's cursed energy is one super powerful, but also that he's feinting attacks with his cursed energy. Yuji is using the environment to his advantage. He's always kind of had a knack for that, but it shows that Yuji is at least capable enough to throw hands with a special grade sorcerer when it comes to regular combat. Obviously, once Rika gets involved, he doesn't stand a chance, but it is interesting to see Yuta at least kind of be like, oh, this guy's actually kind of putting up a decent fight against me, which I really do enjoy, that it shows how far Yuji's come since then. It's, again, like a very good reintroduction.
Yeah, and like you said, with he fell for the curse energy fake on Mahito, like that. He sent that little clone with all his like curse energy out, and that that's how he fell for it in the Mahito fight and before the Nobara thing. But when he broke up into like a bunch of little pieces, but huge growth. Binding Val Merchant, like Yuta killing someone and restarting them does make sense. But the Yuji pulling the knife out was hella cool. Like him just like dashing in and grabbing it quick. I thought that was cool. But I mean, other than that, we also get the Kaori mention right before the fight, which was crazy. But because it's Yuta and we get to see Yuta in action, which is always fun, and that how that aura and how people see Yuta, like more sinister than Gojo. But he's like a saint. I'd put it C though.
Okay.
I agree with C, but my reasoning is a little different. I enjoy the reintroduction of Yuta. I think that's the biggest thing here. That's really the whole point they had this fight, was just to showcase, oh, Yuta's back, and this is their difference. But the biggest thing I enjoyed in the fight is that it does showcase in the power system how your reinforcement can change and how you reinforce your body changes depending on how strong you physically are, which explains why characters like Toto are so hands-on 24/7, because, I mean, like you said, this guy is a gorilla, so when he reinforces his body, he's stronger than most sorcerers are physically. And then Yuta's pretty weak physically, so he has to go out of his way to make himself even stronger with his immense curse energy. I thought that was kind of neat, and that like Yuji's curse energy control isn't what Yuta's is, but he's so physically strong that a little bit of curse energy benefits him a lot more. But overall, it's not that consequential. It just kind of gets rid of the whole higher up strain and the binding value made.
Yeah. Definitely, and it moves the plot along. It gets Yuji and everyone put together. I'd probably put it in a B. I think it's probably closer to like a Yuji Junpei fight than it would be to like the Finger Bearer, Base Toto, and Grasshopper guy. But
Do we get a curse energy like level reading of Yuji ever? Like, I mean, we talk about like he's bathing, or like they say he has like Sukuna draped in Sukuna's curse energy when he left his body or whatever. But have they ever talked about his actual reserves ever? I don't think there's ever been a statement on that. Like, oh, he has almost as much as, you know, da da da. Like, we get that on YouTube several times, or
I'm
But
not
Yuji-
entirely sure. I think he's just. I mean, there's multiple statements saying that he has a lot of it, but I don't know if he's ever like on the same level or like given like props for having like a larger than average amount.
I mean, it's gotta be large. They say he has the, like, Urame said he had the, if by Yuji, he has the exact same potential as Sukuna, so he would have to have the same curse energy reserves eventually, or be able, or be capable of obtaining them. I don't know how you do that, but
yeah, because that dude, he's been using RCT a lot in the last 20 or so chapters.
Yeah.
No,
it was like
I
that
was just
Naruto
wondering.
bucket.
No,
Yeah, at this
facts.
point, it's the last arc. We just gotta kind of
Yeah.
get these characters to the end, however we have to. But so the next moment that Yuji does anything, and it's not even really a large fight. Megami kind of has
Excuse
the
me.
bigger fight. Oh, you're good. It's not even really a big fight. Megami has the bigger fight for this arc for sure with Kirara, but Yuji does have that brief encounter with Hikari, which is Yuji. I think it's funny because Yuji kind of fucks up the whole encounter where he's like, "Oh, I don't know who Gojo is," and Hikari's like, "Interesting. Every sorcerer knows who Gojo is, so why are you lying to me?" And I think it harps on the fact that Yuji, like we kind of talked about before, Yuji is not from this world. As well as he's managed to integrate himself into it and has tried and succeeded in becoming a very strong Jujutsu sorcerer, he's still not, he's only been in it for less than a year. He doesn't realize subtle intricacies that normal people in Jujutsu society that have been in it their entire lives would, like that probably every single person that has curse energy would know who Gojo is. Even if they might not know him personally, they would at least have heard the story of the guy with the 6 eyes. So that immediately, I love that that's the first thing that clues Hikari in that Yuji is a fraud. So I think that's very interesting that it harps on Yuji's character as a whole. And also it shows us the extent that he's willing to profess his cog mentality and how much he truly believes in it again. Similar to how I think the transfigured humans, the Kechizu versus Esso fight and everything like that shows how much Yuji is willing to commit to his current philosophy at the time. I feel like Hikari is that representation for the cog mentality, because Hikari is full on beating the brakes off of Yuji, busting his nose apart. Potentially, I'm surprised Yuji's skull is even intact and didn't blow up or get broken into pieces by some of the punches that Hikari was whipping his way. Literally whipping. He wasn't even like cocking back and throwing it. He was just lobbing his arm at him. And yeah, I think this is mainly here to show that Yuji believes in this cog mentality, and he's not going to be talked out of it no matter how much is done to him, which ultimately I personally feel ends up being the downside, the negative side to everything, because Yuji's so locked into the cog mentality and believes it so hard, he ends up, whether it was always back in the day he never valued himself, or the value that he no longer feels in himself changed the binding vow. I feel like this ultimately is what leads to Sukuna taking over Megami, because if Yuji never stopped seeing value in himself, it's possible Sukuna would have broken the binding vow and never would have been able to change bodies in all general. I think the cog mentality is like ultimately a flaw that I'm glad Yuji has finally worked his way out of. But yeah, I feel like this is like the pure representation of that. What do you guys think about this fight, or have any sound bites on, you know, the topic at hand?
We got to see Hikari's doors and never showed up again. That's really the highlight here. Besides that, I mean, it's okay. I expected a lot more from Hikari. I agree with what you said, but like as an actual fight, this is usually how I view this one in particular, because it really is these two just throwing hands and Yuji getting punched in the face. And then we're supposed to believe that Hikari is on the level of Yuta, and then he doesn't do anything for the rest of the series so far.
All
Except
I'm
for costume
saying,
though.
yeah, Yuji uses the ancient art of you know, your fist to my face technique. You know, the old hand art of self-defense. The I I'm I don't know. I'm trying to think of where I would put this fight. Cause not much. I mean, I wish Hikari would be like Punch on a Rame with that kind of, that kind of energy. You know, maybe then I'd want to see it. But I'm a Hikari hater, proudly. No, he's fine.
Yeah, I kind of
But
agree. Hikari.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
you're
I'm not a
joking.
huge. I'm not even the Kashimo fight. The Kashimo fight is gas, but uh, I would probably just give this one a D. Not much
Yeah,
to say, really.
I feel that.
I
I
can meme
definitely
for
agree.
days. I can meme for days.
Yeah, like I said, I agree with D. The main reason I like it is because I think it's a great way. It shows that Yuji is willing to do anything he needs to accomplish his goals. He needs Hikari. They need Hikari. His friends need Hikari for the culling game, and he feels there's no choice in that negotiation. It needs to happen. So even if it means Yuji getting his shit rocked, Yuji's willing to bear through it with the straightest of face and deal with it because it's what's going to get Gojo saved and help his friends and make sure everyone is saved and has a proper death. And it gets him closer to self-executing because we know once he became a cog, that's ultimately what Yuji's goal was, to achieve whatever he needed to achieve and then die at the end of it with Sukuna, no matter what ended up happening. And that's again why I think this is the first instance we see of, again, the cog mentality and how it could be detrimental to Yuji as a whole. And I think we will see that come back again to bite him, especially when we get to the Higuruma fight. But in between, there's another small fight with Haba, the helicopter guy, and his girlfriend, the jet hair guy, jet hair girl. And I think this fight could probably be either, if not another D, basically another F. I think this fight literally is just here to show that when it comes to an average sorcerer, Yuji is now just a fucking wrecking ball to them. Yuji is just night and day, so much better than an average sorcerer at this point. He's dragging people through buildings like Three Finger Sukuna was against Megami. And I love something that Tiberius pointed out in the Yuji versus Mahito fight, where Toto takes the coat hanger, throws it, teleports to beat the polymorphic soul Isomer. I love that we see some of Toto's influence in Yuji still here, where we get Yuji throwing the curse imbued rock, and that's how he actually projectile takes out the helicopter lady. As opposed to getting on her level because, she's in the air. Yuji's only left, right, good night at this point. He can't exactly fight Ariel.
Let's not downplay the thematic scope and the deep well of information we can gather from him fighting the Mile High Club. All right, it's a F though.
I agree. F. I don't even remember this fight. I'm gonna be honest. It was like I remember this one in like 2 years.
Yeah, Yuji literally just busts this dude's skull. Apparently not good enough because he's still good enough to fight another day, and then gets popped by a sniper rifle or something when the military jumps in.
Fodder. Yeah, maybe it's like some Swahili myth of the helicopter head and airplane head,
Oh God.
and we could just like deep dive on that.
Yeah, like I said, I agree with you, Quirkless. Very forgettable. Definitely an F tier fight. I
Ooh.
think it. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was say I hate Hikari so much. I want to put this in C. I put it to you like that.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
I mean, like D for doors for Hikari and F for forgettable for this one.
Yeah, I think it mostly just exists as a way to show how far Yuji is compared to an average sorcerer. Because ultimately, again, I think like the major impact of how the cog mentality and who Yuji is as a character kind of gets challenged more in the Higuruma battle. Where, I mean, Higuruma, we all know him, we all love him, Higuruma is an amazing character. His introduction to the story is like pure peak. And that short chapter we get of seeing him be the one lawyer in a 99% conviction rate that's willing to literally just stare into the abyss and try and help people that deserve help, people that no one else is willing to help. It, I feel like, plays a huge hand into the way that Yuji morphs his cog mentality into someone that views life as more important than death. And I just feel like Yuji being the person that awakens Higuruma from the darkness is such a poetic way of Higuruma eventually freeing Yuji from that very same darkness later on. And yeah, I feel like the cog mentality shows its flaws here with Judgeman, you know, charging Yuji for the deaths of all the people in Shibuya, and Yuji proudly accepting it, even though technically speaking, as Higuruma decides, it really shouldn't even be Yuji's fault to bear. Yuji's heroic, and it's you know, great that you're willing to take on that burden, but it's not really your burden to bear, and it's actually negatively affecting you to bear the burdens that aren't yours. You should be more than happy to give that problem to Sukuna.
Yeah, the Higgy. I think Higgy's like a litmus test early on to see how like what people are reading JJK for. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot in this character in a very short amount of time. I think he's top 3. Get like Gege's best examples of character writing is like Choso, Geto, and Higuruma. Those are like my 3 for like Gege, you know, character writing. And he's an Urasawa looking character in a Gege world. But I have to give him an A just because of what he did for Yuji and, you know, helped ease his mind. He was instrumental. And I mean, I wasn't big on the domain itself, but I thought it was very, very cool how he used his ability and basically he like retrofitted back into like the manipulating curse energy and all that. And we see like the next level genius he is. Like domain amplification is the best example for Higuruma's genius, you know.
Yeah, Higuruma learning Jujutsu sorcery backwards from his domain expansion will never not be one of the coolest things to me ever in life. I will always stan Higuruma. He's an amazing character. Even his impact to the Shinjuku Showdown arc was legendary. And the fact that Yuji, again, was able to awaken the light in Higuruma's heart, and Higuruma then takes the second chance that he's been given, instead of feeling bad about himself, and instead of not wanting to change anything and just accepting the bad hand that he's been dealt, similar to older Yuji might have, he, like a Jujutsu sorcerer, looks death in the face and goes, I'm going to fight to the very end to try and potentially redeem the bad things that I have done. And he looks Yuji in the eyes at the end of his day and goes, you've got this, similar to how Nanami does. And I feel like that might have been the moment that Yuji truly believed that this new mentality that he takes on in 265 was the way to go. But again, focusing more on the actual fight in and of itself, the domain expansion is great. Seeing Yuji try and handle the domain, also I think it is another testament to how far Yuji's come as a sorcerer, because when he's up against the ropes, when Higuruma's about to crush him with the giant mallet, Yuji's thinking to himself, how can I get out of this? How can I get out of this? Restart the trial, restart the domain. So it shows that Yuji's battle intelligence is also growing from, I know we didn't really talk about it before, but the Jiro Awasaka duo fight Yuji has with Megami, it's, personally, I feel like it's more of a Megami fight than a Yuji fight, because Megami's the one that figures out how to beat the curse user and also use their talents to best get the W, whereas, and Yuji's kind of useless in that fight because he's clueless, he can't figure out stuff like that at this point, whereas now fighting Higuruma, he's at least smart enough to go, context clues, I could probably restart this trial, even though he has no reason to believe that will come true or not. So I think this is also a great testament to how far Yuji's come battle intelligence wise as well, fighting Higuruma. I know a lot of people are saying that Yuji got a solo W against Higuruma, but Yuji literally would have lost if Higuruma didn't feel bad for him. So I don't consider this a single Yuji W. I just don't.
Personally, I love Higuruma, just like you. I think Higuruma is one of the smartest characters in this series, especially since he actually has an education beyond Hogwarts, which is pretty much all these guys have. Like, I mean, like, what's the actual education at Jujutsu High? Terrible. And this guy's a lawyer. Like, he is the one that they should have put in charge of pretty much everything when it comes to making plans. Well, maybe not plans, but
You're so right, though. That's so funny.
yeah,
Yeah,
these guys
Higuruma-
are all
Go ahead.
uneducated swine. So say it.
Higuruma is definitely like one of the best examples of a sorcerer that came from outside of Jujutsu society, because, like you said, he was so educated in other things. He was able to take that genius and kind of apply it to Jujutsu sorcery almost like a prodigy would. You know, like even though he had never done Jujutsu sorcery before, he was able to basically take the same effort of passing the bar exam and go, okay, let me dissect this. Oh, look at this. I've controlled curse energy, and this is how you do barriers. I love Higuruma's development as a sorcerer, and I think that's why you get so many memes of Higuruma would be a great teacher at Jujutsu High, because, I mean, yeah.
He's Doctor Strange. In
We
Jujutsu
also-
Kaisen.
Yeah, we also get the "Yeah, I did it" from Yuji. You know, like just that panel when I remember when that was releasing, that was a crazy panel. That like just like flipping to that or like scrolling to that, but was so like sad. You know, it's like because he's not even trying to get out of the trial no more. He's just like being as candid as he can. But and the memes are funny too, or like that. Sending that as a reaction.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I think I probably rate it as an A. I think you guys gave it like B, though, right?
I'll give it A.
Give it an A. I agree.
Love that. Love that. All right. So the next two fights, we can kind of, I mean, technically they're two different fights, but one's just, in my opinion, a continuation of the other. You do have a really big moment in the first half of this fight, which is the 214 chapter fight between Yuji and Meguna, when Yuji is confronting Sukuna right before he separates and leaves to go actually finish the vessel possession. Which you could also consider this is, Yuji and Maki versus Sukuna as well. I think the big moment from this, everyone notices it, everyone knows it, everyone loves it, which is Yuji walking through the storm of cleave attacks to punch Sukuna through the face. I think we see Yuji's eyes change here for one of the first times to kind of look more like Sukuna's. Yuji's anger, his bloodlust, leveling him up to a degree of power that even Sukuna is shocked and is like, where is this all coming from? So I think it's a great almost like quote unquote awakening or introduction to what Yuji will become later. Like this is, again, in my opinion, the final strike in the Cog mentality, because again, the Cog mentality is what led to Yuji not valuing life, not valuing himself, and ultimately is the reason why Sukuna was able to take advantage of the Enchained Vow and take over Megami. So I think this is Yuji's anger at himself, anger at Sukuna, at curses as a whole. And again, I think this is the death of the Cog mentality.
Yeah, that's my 214 is my favorite chapter. I love that chapter. That's actually the first video I made on JJK actually. It hits home like just like that it's a S tier chapter for me no matter what. Like yeah, it's kind of short, but still the Maki pull up on Meguna was hella hard. The two walking through the slashes. I'm hoping we get another rendition of that, but now Yuji with like RCT, and that would be fire to see like an updated version. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else really. I mean, we get Sukuna roasting him when he leaves, but and to your point, like Yuji, I feel like he does hit a turning point as a character. We just don't really get to see it, because the Gojo, we get the Yorozu stuff and the Gojo, but
Yeah, we go right to a time skip, I think, right after that. But right before, Gojo comes back, that we unseal Gojo, we see Yuji afterwards, right? Like, he's like, I'll eat anything to kill Sukuna. And I think this is the death, and we see the birth of the new mentality. We don't really see because it's in the time skip, but yeah, that's how I look at this fight.
This one, I'm with Tiberius. 214 is my favorite chapter. This is when Yuji's internal conflict becomes external. He has to fight it like literally with his hands. So it's
True.
it's the best, really. I like it's what set off JJK for me. It's also the chapter that made me start making YouTube content, or at least around the time like chapter 213.
This was a big
Yeah.
turning point for the story. A lot of hype started as soon as Sukuna took over Megami. This was like a
Dude.
big turning point for everything. It was a new era. We entered a new era of
Facts.
JJK for sure.
Like, I had a cringy line. I thought I was cooking. I thought I was deep in, you know. But I was like, his inner, he's feeling like he's externally feeling the slashes from his once inner demon,
Okay. I fuck with that. I
But,
fuck with the vision.
I
but
understand, yeah. See, he gets to fight the sorry, I'm following my words here. I'm brain farting. His internal conflict with Sukuna, the person that's been harassing him the whole series inside, finally comes out. They finally actually have a conversation in the real world, in real space.
Yeah, it's the first time
And
they see each other face to face physically. I didn't even. I love that.
that's why this chapter is so big for me. It also sets up like after this chapter ends and after this fight ends in chapter 215, that's when you're like, okay, they have the prison realm, they have Angel, Gojo's coming back, and he's free.
Yeah. So
yeah, because
oh,
that
go
was
ahead.
huge going forward. I was just saying that was huge. Like, from where do we go? Where do we go from here? Like, as a story, like when you see him fly away, you're like, oh. So I mean, that's Kenjaku's bird, or like that's I forgot what they flew away. I know
They
were
flew away
on
on Nue.
yeah, but they showed they showed Rame and Kenny with each other right before this, flying together on like a I can't remember if it was actually in a chapter or if it was like a separate art, but yeah, I mean this was like, man, this is like all the worst things that could go wrong, like are like being unfolding in front of Yuji. It was very. I remember watching those League Night streams were crazy.
Oh yeah, I really think that around this time period, this is when JJK season 2 was approaching as well. This is really when JJK hit its like peak in popularity, and I think it was like a real privilege to make content for that during that time period. That's my favorite time period in JJK,
Agreed.
personally.
I agree completely. It's definitely the
You
peak.
know, a lot of like most people, like I've asked several people their like 3 favorite chapters, and it's crazy that most people all say that their 3 favorite chapters all are 212 and up. Like 90% of the answers I got were all 212 or higher. And it's like the end of the series. It's gonna finish before 300, and you could tell people like looking back on it, yeah, JJK's best is within the last 100 chapters. That's crazy.
I think Akatami did a great job, and like a huge reason for that is because the plot points they set up for so long. Like I think what makes a story excellent is when the foreshadowing is visible, and the more you dig, the more you're like, wow, that's actually really clever. Like one of my favorite directors is Ari Aster, and he does the same thing, where the more you look into the story, the more there is to find. And on like a reread or a rewatch, you find more and more, and you're like, wow, so that was there the entire time. Like people were talking about Sukuna and Yuji being brothers or being related for so long, and then we get payoff for that. And a lot of it is payoff that if you were paying attention, you'd notice. And it's not because you're smart, it's just that it rewards attentive reading. And I think it's something that I wish more series would do.
Yeah, like Volume 4, the title for Volume 4, one of the chapters in there, I can't remember which one. It's like it has something about like that day, like the name of it, the name of the actual chapter. And I think the actual tag, it's "I'm gonna kill you," and the chapter is 26, is "To You Someday." And like I never looked back on like there's something I think from like chapter 3, I think, that relates back to 265 as well. Just going back and looking on certain things as you read it, crazy.
That's one reason why I think Gege has maintained consistency throughout. I've always stuck with the fact that Gege has always known what he's doing, and I think going back and seeing all of the symbolism and seeing things that have paid off that you wouldn't have expected to even be a payoff, you just thought was just a small little bit of the story, Gege knows what he's doing. He's a masterclass. He makes mistakes, but he's a great writer. He really is. No writer is without flaw. No writer is
You
without
can
flaw.
tell.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
for sure.
Gege he just be making shit up. Like there's so many things that like shoot holes through that, you know. I mean, shit. Even JJK0, like Yuta's, he's being his arms, Rika's arms like are around him. It like, I mean, you could say that's because Rika goes away at the end of the movie or whatever. But look at Rika in 262, sobbing on the man.
So what would you
sometimes-
guys go
I
ahead.
mean, not saying that, but there's so many other things. Even Angel's kind of depicted on the chapter 1 cover. Those 2 white frogs, one's got wings and the Sukuna thing. I read that as like angel symbolism.
I never really saw it that way. That's actually an interesting take. I agree with Noop that the Gege Akutami does have they usually have a hand on what they're writing, and sometimes I feel like Gege Akutami is actually wasted on a battle manga, and like they could do so much more because they clearly have a story. They were not the battle manga, there's anything wrong with battle manga, and they do have a great power system, but Gege Akutami clearly has a story they want to tell, and sometimes it feels like it's almost at odds with the community that these kinds of series build up, which is hugely power scaling. But usually the story takes precedent over power scaling, especially in JJK, in my opinion.
Yeah. Where would you guys put this? Where would you guys rank this fight?
S.
S.
Damn. Okay. I would probably give it like a B, if anything. So I guess that would. Interesting. I didn't know you guys love. I knew you guys love this fight so much, but to give it an S, so you think this is the same level? I guess it's your best chapter. You think it's the same as Choso, Hanami, Mahito? Damn, crazy. It's interesting.
No
Yeah.
op.
Definitely.
I'll die on that hill. Okay,
That's
buddy?
interesting. That's interesting. So up next is just the Yuji and Sukuna fight that we have now. Now, obviously, you've had multiple fights with Sukuna. Yuji has gone through 3 or 4 rounds at this point. But so I guess ultimately you can kind of judge this as Yuji's performance against Sukuna as a whole. When Yuji's fighting with Higuruma, when Yuji's fighting after Higuruma by himself, and we reveal the reverse curse technique. Yuji hitting all 7, 8 black flashes and really revealing that he has dismantle and blood manipulation against Sukuna. The fact that he's squaring up with Sukuna kind of somewhat evenly, even though we know that Sukuna, when he puts his back into it, can definitely whack Yuji aside if he needs to. I feel like Yuji has come so far, and this, depending on what happens next chapter with 266, this really could genuinely be the completion of Itadori's arc as a whole.
You had me at Sukuna and Yuji. S.
Yeah, pretty much everything I could say about the last chapter of the last fight is the same in this one. I mean, obviously he unlocks Shrine, but I kind of view them as like you said at the beginning, part 2, part 1. So
Yeah.
And we did a lot of talking in the beginning of the stream as well about this, and I mean, Yuji isn't in every part of the Sukuna fight, obviously, but I mean, just like he's casually getting outran by Sukuna when they drop in. And I mean, now like we see Yuji who like felt helpless, or not, I don't want to say helpless, but like in the when him and Higuruma drop down, we see Sukuna like thinks, there's something up with his punch, and we get we get the confirmation later on that like he's like purposely like targeting the space in between him and Megami. But I mean, there's not really much to say other than like repeat everything from the earlier in the stream and what you said. It's gas. I'll put it like this. Now to y'all, did it live up to the hype? Up until this point, anything could happen. But so far, like this Yuji Sukuna interaction, would you say lived up to the hype?
I mean, right now it's kind of tough to say, at least until we get like the ending. I want to see how it ends for sure, just because ultimately for me it all just depends on how the landing sticks, right? If we get into chapter 266 and Yuji and Sukuna are in a ball pit and the fight doesn't feel satisfying at all, then I'll come right out and admit that. That's why I'm kind of withholding my opinion, especially as we get into these crucial chapters, because there could be literally Gege could drop piss next week I feel like we're at a very
Oh, for sure.
critical moment of the story where every chapter is important.
I
So it's really
guess
hard for me to give my opinion on like
I'm going
overall.
my mindset with I'm going at it with like my mindset of Gege's landing the plane, even if it's dinged up. Like in my like just obviously we all have different takes on what that means, but like I was just wondering how y'all looked at it. I mean, I get that answer because I can imagine, especially especially y'all two, people will hold y'all up to the stake to the fire way worse than me. Like, fuck
That's what we live for.
that.
For me, it feels like we're on a roller coaster and we just entered a dark tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel is either a sick drop or a brick wall.
Bro, I've been thinking this whole Sukuna cycle. I've been eating good. It's like I mean, it could be biased. Call me a gay gagger if you want, but I've been eating good this past year.
Yeah, the Sukuna chapters have definitely been a roller coaster. I think that's like the greatest way that it could have been described, Quirkless, is like we're on a roller coaster, ups and downs, and we just went into a tunnel and we don't know what's on the other side of it. It could be a brick wall, we run into it and that's the end of the ride, or it could be an awesome, drop with a loop-de-loop and it takes us on a even crazier ride. It really could go either way, because it's such a monumental and important fight. And I feel like, unlike the previous Yuji versus Sukuna fight that we talked about and we, flexed on and gave S's and everything like that, this fight has so much riding on it. Whereas that fight was, as we mentioned, the death of Yuji's Cog mentality, the birth of Yuji becoming something new and realizing a different part of himself and realizing power that he may have never had, and also staring this internal struggle, this internal trauma he's had throughout the whole story in the face physically out in the real world. And now, as I kind of mentioned before in the very introduction of the story, and honestly, I think the fact that the reason why we don't have much to say is because we kind of talked about so much throughout the entire stream and video that was ultimately my goal. Is this? It proves that the story of Yuji, every single fight, every single moment has kind of led up to this very part, and now we're just kind of waiting to see where the arc kind of completes. Right, we're waiting to see if that circle actually completes a full circle or if it goes off the rails. And from what everything has been shown and the way that we've all kind of talked about every single fight and how Gege's kind of remained consistent, how the suffering created development and Yuji really has grown and changed and become different people. At the end of the day, the kind of growth that Yuji has shown, viewing all life as valuable and is literally a culmination of everything we've talked about just reaching its final stage. It's taken small aspects of his grandpa's wish of wanting to save people. It's taken small aspects of Jujutsu sorcerer life and being able to handle the dark deeds and understanding people are going to die around you and you can muddy that memory by caring too much or changing or affecting their death. Just honor them by carrying on your own way. And then we get the Cog mentality. And then ultimately all of that formed together along with Higuruma's kind of sense of justice and impact on Yuji to create the Yuji we know now, which may be the closest person to enlightenment that we've ever had before. Again, I know people hate when I say that because you could argue that narrators and Gojo has said Gojo or Sukuna are the real honored one. But I think with the Buddhist symbolism that we've gotten in 265 and the way that Yuji was willing to spare Sukuna of all people, I feel like Yuji has fully completed his arc and Yuji will defeat Sukuna, kill Sukuna, whether that means killing him and ending his life or taking him back into himself, and just living with Sukuna forever, and tape as a taming, as like the Naruto X. I don't know, people would hate that, but I feel like that might be the kind of peaceful Buddhist outlook Yuji may end up taking. And Sukuna, it can either have the choice of biting the bullet and swallowing his pride and going inside of Yuji, or dying and getting the warrior death he's been giving out to so many people before him.
Yeah, like just in the past year, I feel like everything that we got from the series, I mean, you could even say really like the Gojo fight from that point forward, like 222 forward. It's, I think, pushed the power system and like the entire fandom, like bad readers, TikTok, Twitter reader, whatever, whoever it is, I think across the board, like the understanding of jujitsu is, we all have a better understanding of it now. Obviously, of course, that's the story. But I'm talking like compared to the point in the story we're at now to like where most shonen is kind of, it's just reaffirmations of itself. I feel like Gege's introduced things and like taught us things as like from 222 forward that made it feel like refreshing to me. Where at the end of the story, I feel like I'm just reading it, and it's the same things, or not necessarily the same things, because there's always going to be a twist at the end. But the power system itself is like still like getting updated as we go. Like the perception. I think like how perception's so important to jujitsu, and I mean it's Sukuna says it himself, but like that's not talked about early on enough. I personally feel like as long as Gege lands the plane, this thing has been up. I'll confidently say, excuse me, that it's lived up to the hype. Sukuna's he reaffirmed everything they said he was and more.
I agree if he land the plane. It's like I'm fine with a mediocre ending, to be honest. I've long since been burned by Game of Thrones. I think we talked about this like 2 weeks
Yes.
ago. Like I will never be hurt like that again. So I'm like, as long as if it's just okay, it's hard to stick a landing. I'd rather have an alright ending. Occasionally you get like a Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Quirkless. Where like I feel like the wound from that has never closed, and I feel like it's changed the way that like I invest myself in ongoing media. Like I just don't get as like full on invested as I used to, because like I feel like the downfall of getting fully invested into something like Thrones and then just having the ending literally just might as well just like kick you in the nads and then spit on you afterwards for like ever caring at all about like the subtle intricacies of the story and all the being an attentive reader at the end of the day amounted to just fuck you. That's your fault for being an attentive reader or an attentive watcher. So as long as I agree with you, as long as it doesn't end up like that, and as long as it Gege attempts to answer most of the questions that he's laid out, and he doesn't just or like he just leaves the questions open-ended and then just like goes, oh, you thought I was going to answer that? Ha, joke's on you. Then that would really be the only way I could, be upset. But like you said, as long as it's a mediocre ending, as long as Gege sticks it and manages to tighten everything up to an actual endpoint and doesn't just drop the ball entirely, I'll probably be okay with it. I'll probably be okay.
I guess read, or take stories differently. Like I don't really like hold. I mean, I get it. I've never seen Game of Thrones. I don't really watch much TV, but just from what Gege is presenting in the story and how he's concluded the arcs, there's no like drop off and obviously the story is the main thing. I get, and I'm not saying y'all are wrong for y'all's opinion, but Gege's just, I feel comfortable enough to know that like even if this ending was bad, I can easily tell you like up to this point what I love. Like
Agreed.
I wouldn't, even if he fumbles like Kenwakui with Tokyo Revengers. Like I don't think Gege can mess up that bad.
No, I don't think that's possible. I don't think that
was a 70 chapter fumble from Wakui.
Yeah.
We're not seeing that. We're seeing the endings of the story now. And I mean, the conclusion does hit the hardest, of course. Like that's your lasting impression. It moves the most. I get all that, but like my investment or how I viewed Sukuna and like what he did, and like I think their dynamics lived up to the hype.
I mean, according to Gege, he's had the ending of the story finished since the very beginning. There's just been subtle character endings that he's had to, put together and finish up, but he's always had the final chapter figured out. And honestly, I know a lot of, people that write stories say that, and it usually ends up not being true. They end up changing things. But just the interviews that I've seen of Gege and the way that I've seen him stick to so many of the ideas that, like I said, the Jujutsu Sosen, seeing how the beginning of Jujutsu Sosen was essentially the intro of Jujutsu Kaisen that we got just with the characters worked around, or the culling game introduction in the Jujutsu first draft was literally to a T, almost the exact same introduction that we got for the actual culling game in the story, just with, again, some characters moved around to better fit what the actual final vision of the story ended up being. So I believe Gege when he says he's had the ending worked out from the very beginning, and I don't see him deviating from that, again, especially with what we said before on how you only need to look back into the story and you can find new things almost every new chapter of payoffs that you didn't realize were payoffs happening, or subtle foreshadowings that didn't even tip you off at the beginning that you're like, you can look back on now and be like, holy shit, this was, foreshadowing this, or holy shit, this was the start of this. I mean, to the point that you got Gege in the Higuruma fight. Yuji is visiting the pachinko parlor in chapter 64, and then that comes back into the fray in chapter 164, I think, exactly, or 165 again, with Higuruma pulling that up. It's like small things like that. You're like, oh shit, I never expected that to even come up again. So I think Gege, I think if Gege's really had the story built out for a long time, then that tells me that he's going to end with what he's thought of and had themes for since the beginning of the story. So as long as he does that, I think it's fine. But ultimately, before I get your guys' closing thoughts on this, I think it's pretty fair to say we can't really rank this without getting the ending for next week or the next couple weeks.
Agreed. We're on like the cliff's edge, so it's kind of hard
I'll
to tell.
rate it S. I'll rate it. Nah, I get it though.
You can
So
see the
I
two
think it
people
feels
that have
like
been
that.
hurt by thrones don't want to rank it, and then you're like S.
I mean, if it's cheeks, if the ending, if they start and they actually just enter a archery or like archery tournament together, or something crazy, that's one thing. But like, if I'm not even gonna say like the landing sticks, I just think that the enjoyment, and you call it recency bias. I know how I feel. Like I'll stand 10 toes on this. Play this at my funeral even. Nah, but this, like, the enjoyment I've had, like, with the Sukuna cycle and all that, like, there's so much to hate about the JJK fandom, honestly. Like, the JJK fandom is cheeks, but I do, even with all that, the weekly discourse, I enjoy it, and
Did you die mid-sentence? What happened? Are you okay?
The JJK fandom got him.
maybe I might have died. Holy shit. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right, the ghost of Akutami Pass is coming to get me. Nah, basically just I'll stand on it. Like, I've enjoyed it. I don't think if the ending's cheeks, I'll come out and say it's cheeks, but I'll still feel that way about it, because 265 was so fucking good and felt like the perfect, like, to put Yuji up to that threshold at the ending. It's like a nice, like, touch. Like, he just eased Yuji's character in, right? A year of fighting, and then we get 265. Not many mangaka can pull it off.
For sure. Porkless, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about what he said there with the fan with the more of the fandom, which is true. There are a lot of complaints of, like, and I'm fine with complaints for a series. I don't care, but like, and usually I don't even read fandom stuff. I wasn't like making content or talking to people about it. But you do see some complaints that are like, it's not just a complaint about the series. It's a circle jerk of people that don't even know what they're talking about in some cases. Not all of them, but like, it'll be a complaint about a misinterpreted line or something like that. It's always interesting to me. But I do like how we have Gege Akutami did a pretty cool job of, even though the MC is fighting the main villain now, it might come in the end that Gojo and Sukuna are just the two strongest characters in the series, as it was like set up in the beginning. That's just how it ends.
Love
Yeah,
that.
I think it'll be that way. Suguna's number one, always, in strength anyway.
So,
Let them know.
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to type areas, so let them know.
So that's I'm ultimately I'm pretty happy with the way that the tier list came. Again, the tier list wasn't really too important with me. I really just wanted to go through every single moment of Yuji's development, and I feel like we kind of hit almost every single important aspect to Yuji's character from chapter 1 all the way up to 265. and it will be an interesting way to kind of top off Yuji's entire character development. Now that we've kind of revisited everything and we have the full picture, we can finally lay down that last puzzle piece, next week and see what Gege finishes up with. And I think ultimately we did a pretty good job. And I guess my main point for all of this, so I'll ask each of you your own opinion on everything, but I kind of probably already know the answer. Corkless, do you think suffering can create development?
Oh, absolutely, even in real life.
Tiberius, same question.
Facts, yeah. You don't go through it, you grow through it.
100%. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's what I tried to prove with all of this. And I think if you've made it through this entire stream or this entire video, starting off from the introduction fight of chapter 1 that sits right down in F, to the fights in D tier, the fights in C, B, A, all the way to the major fights in S that we couldn't gush about enough and we all love for very different reasons. And I think it shows that Yuji is not the same person he was in chapter 1. Yuji has definitely become a new character more than once. I feel like we've set almost 2 or 3 to potentially 4 different Yuji eras throughout his life, and I'm very happy that this, if anything, will prove that Yuji not only has character development, but he has very good writing. And I think that's, again, what my main point for all of this stream was meant to be. So before we kind of close out, we've been streaming for almost 3 hours. I thank every single one of you guys for being here, watching us, and just giving us the time of day. It means the world to me that you guys would be so willing to support and just show love to us, and also just share in our love for Yuji Itadori. I want to thank my 2 guests, Corkless and Tiberius, for both being here. And I want to give you guys, again, a moment. If you guys have any, thoughts on the stream as a whole, everything we've talked about, just want to say goodbye, you got something you want to plug, this is your time. I give you full floor, Tiberius.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having me. Sorry, my attention's been a little divided dealing with my dog here, but I appreciate you
Not at
having
all,
me.
brother.
It's always fun. It's always a good time. I don't usually or try to plug my stuff, but I did just drop a video, Yuji, the True Enlightened one, and I think it's a banger. It's my best video I ever made, and I guarantee it's at least worth a watch. Go in there, and if you hate it, roast me in the comments. If you don't like the thumbnail, roast me in the comments. But at least go check it out. I think you won't be disappointed. And that's it. Thank you, Noah. Always a pleasure.
His channel will be in the description, and also with the @ handles on YouTube. You can go ahead, just click on his name in the title, go subscribe to him, go show him some love. I full vouch for this man. And same for Quirkless. I vouch for him too. Tell us what you got going on, Quirkless. Like it's the end of a Hot Ones episode.
I have a Hot Ones episode. You guys should subscribe to No Operator, get the 100K subs, guys, and like the stream.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. You got nothing going on. You're not making a big comeback.
We'll see. We'll see.
Oh, big shoo right now. Secrets. Okay. Well, Tiberius, did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'll say he looks like Yuta, and I'm over here looking like what's your boy's name? Kamo, running away, like just being selfish.
That's what Fake Weave did to me last time, so
you got to get it
right.
back.
I remember that.
Oh man, I love it. I love the subtle beats.
Builds character.
Yeah, for real.
Taught me a life lesson.
Guys, thank you all so much. Seriously, thank the guests. Thank you guys for being great. I'm sending spirit bomb energy all around, and I hope you accomplish your goals, whether it's morning, afternoon, or night, whatever time zone you're in. I hope you kill it. I will see you guys on Friday. I still don't know what I'm going to do for Friday, but we're going to figure something out. It'll be fun. And yeah, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.